Ice like we at the garden. On PD, don't get me started. Whole team walk, give me the party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the course, I would've down. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get out my shell, I've been laying low. It get real when it comes to the playoffs. Just fight with me, no one's a KO.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Ladies and gentlemen, from La Casa de los Lobos, the Pit, here at the University of New Mexico, let's get ready to rumble!
There's a triple hey for you. How's everybody doing? My name's Ryan Tamori. Welcome to the Pit Press Live. Busy show to get to today. I'm flying solo right now, so I'm sure a ton of you Lobo fans are so ecstatic for that. Hey, Jimmy H, look at the time. Look what happens when I'm doing this by myself and we don't talk pregame or pre-show. And don't hit me with like a circle jerk joke. I went to Catholic school, the dirty minds there. All right. Want to thank our as I go into our sponsors after that terrible joke. Let me tell you who's on the show today. 8:45, Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. 9 o'clock, Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal. And then I guess a Q&A segment with former UNM linebacker Lobo back, Mr. Ben Wysong. Happy to have him on. We're going to talk other things besides Lobos, just anything college football related and NFL related. To Mr. David Canyenda out there, my NBA bets are 1-0 1 and 2, and I know you're not listening. Want to thank our sponsors, Dulce River Bakery and Coffee, Affordable Solar, Turquoise Desert Tap Room, Hydro Bar, and Affordable Service, not to be confused with Affordable Solar. Those are two different things. Affordable Service, heating, plumbing, and air conditioning for your HVAC needs in the Albuquerque and Rio Rancho area. Affordable Service has been in business in New Mexico since 1986 and is still locally owned. During that time, they've served more than 40,000 customers, providing complete residential and light commercial HVAC services, including heating and cooling, electrical, and plumbing. Affordable Service takes pride in its staff and its commitment to Albuquerque and Rio Rancho and those communities. Again, appreciate Affordable Service. UNM football is going for its 4th win in a row. And to quote Lou Brown from Major League Two, I think Major League Two, when you win a game and then you win another, it's called a winning streak. That's something we don't talk about often in these parts. So very excited to watch them. Colorado State, watch them in Fort Collins on Saturday. That game is at 3, and I forgot what channel it's on, but you can always catch it on Lobo Radio Network, 96.3, 770 KKOB. Rob Portnoy, Dontrell Moore on the call, pregame, halftime, postgame. JJ Buck, two friends of this show. JJ Buck and Ned James. I'm looking at, I'm a man. I can't do two things at once. 3 o'clock kickoff. It's on the Mountain West Network. Did not know that. All right. So there you go. 3 o'clock on Saturday. I cannot believe we are already at the end of October. I just felt like I was in Vegas for Mountain West Conference Football Media Days. And in 2 weeks, I'll be on a plane to Vegas. And then following that, I'm on a plane to the motherland that is New Jersey for St. John's and UNM. We're going to go to 2 games this year on the road in Mountain West Conference schedule already that at least I'll be at. And that's Boise and San Diego State. Lo and behold, San Diego's my favorite place over Albuquerque, Central New Jersey. It's just a lot nicer. And then I do love Vegas. Who doesn't love Vegas? And for those of you who have listened to the show, I was a fall down drunk at one point in my life. I don't like to say sober. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in over 3 years. And I have figured out how to have fun in Vegas without it. And it's don't go in the gutter to the usual suspects that watch. I do like to sports gamble, so I don't know, how you figure that out. But I'm a lot more smarter. At least that pays dividends sometimes. A lot to get into today. We'll talk a lot Lobo stuff down the road. You need to stay out of Vegas. No, I don't. I don't really gamble that hard when I'm there. I take it in. I like food. I've gotten fat. And you're making shit up. I know who you're voting for. And I'll steer clear of politics with my U.S. history degree. UNM next Monday night in an exhibition game. We'll play UTEP. Looking forward to that. I was starting to look at UTEP's roster. I know Joe Golding's the head coach. I don't know much about UTEP basketball. I know they're in Conference USA. Obviously, if you know your history and Texas Western, I have much love for UTEP. I think it's very cool. When you go down to El Paso, I haven't been down in years, and you hit Glory Road. I think that's very cool. So, again, college basketball right around the corner. Next Monday, the exhibition game. The following Monday night is UNM men's basketball home opener against Nichols, I guess the artist formerly known as Nicholls State. UNM women did have an exhibition where the media was not allowed to take photos. That's a new one. And I might try to plead the fifth on that. It boggles my mind. I guess it's up to the coaches. I don't know why. They played New Mexico Highlands. There's no stats on golobos.com. Because, as I've said, the UNM women's basketball team either has the plans to the Death Star or they're playing Georgia football team in the national championship, and they don't want to know that. or they're invading Normandy. I don't understand that. That's got to be some of the stupidest shit I've ever heard. And I will call out UNM on that. Speaking of which, I'll start here tonight. I definitely didn't want to talk about DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's a big trade because I'm by myself. So that's not funny. Jimmy H, no, that one's not funny. I would rather lose money on gambling than go to a strip club. Yeah, I think it's a waste of money. And I'm not just saying that on the show. And you're the only one commenting on it. So I'm probably losing the crowd tonight. I want to talk about Penn State head coach James Franklin. And if you haven't seen this here today, I'm going to Audrey Snyder. I don't know who Audrey Snyder is. I need to look that up. It is her Twitter page. I'm going to gather she is a Penn State. She covers Post-Gazette. She has covered Penn State since 2012 for various outlets, including the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I want to give her credit where credit's due. The Patriot News and DK Pittsburgh Sports. Snyder is an active member of the Association for Women's Sports and Media, AWSM, and its professional advisor. She's on The Athletic. This happened today in not College Station. Oh my goodness. There's the brain fart. University Park, Pennsylvania. That's right. Or no. Yeah, University Park, right? Yeah, I thought it was something else. Maybe I'm making that up. Here's James Franklin interaction with the media. And if you guys can't hear this, let me know. I did nothing, Jimmy H. Did jack shit. Sat at a sports book. And that's probably about as much as I'll comment on you tonight. You know what? And I forgot to do. Question of the night. How high is your confidence the UNM football team can get to 6 wins and become bowl eligible? We'll talk to Ben Wysong about that. And then feel free to chime in on that if your name isn't Jimmy H. Again, let me know if you can't hear this. This is I believe today's interaction with Penn State, their sports information director, which seemed to be more of damage control these days. But if you can't hear this, let me know. And I got to do my own producing tonight. I apologize. It's a lot of fun. Where'd that go?
Statement yesterday. In our program and athletic department, we'll have no further comment. If you need the statement, please reach out to me or Chris.
Hey guys, any questions?
James, at what point in the summer were you aware that these guys were not going to be on the team?
Again, guys, the university already released a statement. If you need the statement, reach out to me or Chris. We'll have no further comment.
Are there questions about Wisconsin?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Please keep your questions to Wisconsin.
Hey guys.
James, you were banged up at some positions heading into the bye week.
So, if you hadn't heard, James Franklin walked away. Question about rape allegations at Penn State, as if they haven't had a turmoil in the last 15 years. Prosecutors, this is from the New York Post. I'm a big New York Post guy. James Franklin walked away from the microphone when a reporter asked about a situation involving allegations of sexual assault against 2 former members of the Penn State football team. Prosecutors charged former players Jamil Lyons and Kavion Keys with felony rape and other charges stemming from alleged incident that occurred at an on-campus apartment this summer. The pair were members of the football team until August 3rd. I got to say, it's probably one of the more chicken shit things I've seen from a head coach. And I have been a pretty big James Franklin honk. If you listen to my top 26 at the beginning of the year, I said that I like a lot of head coaches. Brian Kelly rubs me the wrong way. fake accent and is from fake Southern accent, and he's from Massachusetts. You know, he oversees the program, and I know that you can't at every waking moment know what is going on in your program. I just think that's a really bad look for Penn State, and I know he has nothing to do with Jerry Sandusky. It's I I just think it's such a bad look. And they are, I think, to a certain degree, and I have my qualms with this being back 15, 16 years ago, being a college sports reporter and a gentleman we've had on our show that I mention a lot, Isaac Avalusea, that and then what has transpired over the last decade, where you used to take a journalist's word. And I'm not perfect. I have made mistakes in this career, and it's a trade that I learned. But James Franklin doesn't cure cancer. He is a football coach. I know he makes a lot of money, and the ever evolving dollar amount that influences college sports to say, which is at an all-time high. He hasn't cured world hunger, cancer. He doesn't do that on a daily basis. He coaches football. And for him to walk away like that, I've mentioned that on this show since we've gained a little bit more popularity. If you've listened since we started this thing back in January of 2023, that it's so easy to not take accountability anymore. And for the on to Wisconsin thing, and for the SID to get snippy there, and I've thought about this because, I've had qualms with how the UNM athletic department, media relations department, redundant there, runs their show, which I think they could do a better job. But that's not here nor there, and that's not why I'm picking on UNM. I just think this is a bad black eye for Penn State and for James Franklin, who has kind of resurrected that program. I think he took over for Bill Bryan. He's been there 7-8 years now, and he's won they're defending Rose Bowl champs. What they beat? 2 years ago they beat Utah when Cam Rising was only 41, and I like Cam Rising, but I just think it's such a bad look for him to walk away. And this is going back to August. And I'm sure there are some of you out there that are saying, to blame the media. Last I checked, the media in College Park, that's it, University Park, College Park, Pennsylvania, isn't up against sexual assault allegations. They are just there to ask questions. I just think it's such a poor look for him to walk away. And these are beyond serious allegations. Again, I come on this show. I'm no angel. I did my share of partying, but I don't think I've had sexual assault allegations against me. It's just for him to walk away and then walk into Wisconsin. And I'm still in my thunder, and it's nothing original, but the cover up is always worse than the crime. I really believe in that. And I don't know what it is in the world that has transpired over the last 13, 14, 15 years where it's more damage control than getting out in front of things and apologizing. I think I've become more along the lines of somebody jumping out and apologizing before not saying anything and just walking away from the media. And I know for those of you that are listening are probably thinking that, well, it's not the media's right to know. Well, they're supposed to report on things that are out of the ordinary. I dealt with that in college when UNM football under Mike Locksley was getting killed week in and week out. And it was like, well, why can't you write something positive? Well, they lost 72-0 to Oregon. They come home, lose to Tulsa. I think they lost to Tulsa that year. They lost to Texas Tech by 40. They lost to Utah by 40. Things were not good. I had written that the program was in shambles. Well, for those of you who have taken the side of it, yeah, the program was in shambles. I just don't understand the damage control and why you can't come out front and be accountable for it. It's just deny. And I once, I mentioned reporting things out of the ordinary. I don't really like saying if it bleeds, it leads. I was a sports reporter. I did cover a little bit of news for the Daily Lobo when I think the Daily Lobo was more credible. And I'm not here to knock on college kids, but I had, and I won't name him, but I had a mentor of mine back in college tell me that you do not report on the plane when it lands safely because the plane is supposed to land safely. I've tried to find positivity in my own life, but there is a lot of negativity out there, and I try to find solace in what we do here. And we don't talk about these things. I'm flying solo, and I'm trying to find something to talk about tonight. But again, I think it's a real pansy-ass move for Joe Franklin to walk away like that with as much money as he makes. And I understand that they were dismissed from the team. I had not heard about that, but I think because you have a statement ready, some of those reporters there are there to ask the question. So that's what I'm about in regards to that. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They got Mountain West. Jimmy H, if you're the only one commenting. If you're referring to the UNM Lobo, the UNM rings that they got today, I did not see them. And whoopity do, they're Mountain West Conference Championship rings. As I've always said, win the whole thing. 21 point loss to Clemson really doesn't do much to me. I understand it was 10 years since they had not been there. I want to come back and maybe hit on the little World Series a little bit again. 8:45, Nick Coppola from Las Cruces Sun News. And we have more legal things to talk about NMSU with him. So I guess that is the theme tonight. 9 o'clock, Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal. And after Sean, whenever he wants to join, he's part of us now, is Mr. Ben Wysong, of course, former UNM linebacker, Lobo back that played in the mid-2000s for Rocky Long. He'll join us. And, of course, he has Luke and Evan on the team. And again, much kudos to Luke for being on the Comeback Player of the Year award and then the Fred Biletnikoff Award watch list. And I am looking forward to the World Series. I haven't seen anybody, but I haven't even seen at Lobo Ronnie comment. Although he did say F the Mets the other night, which again, I woke up Monday morning and went to work and did a show because, yeah, it kind of did suck that they lost, but it does not destroy my world. Not like the Ravens guy walking around and beating the crap out of Washington Commander fans. Yeah, I didn't earn them, Jimmy H. I would imagine that the players probably would appreciate them. Brilliant comment. We'll be right back. My name's Ryan Tamori. Well, this is the Pit Press Live, and I do appreciate people watching and everybody that's contributed because we wouldn't be there without you. But I'm going to take a quick commercial break to catch my breath. Be back in about 2-3 minutes.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook! I said let him cook!
I'm happy to have Rick Thompson joining me on the show, a two-time offensive state lineman for the St. Pius Sardines. Played for Damian Segura, has his MBA from UNM. That way everybody doesn't have to listen to me complain and moan. Rick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Hope you can hear me. Just happy that basketball season is 12 days out from today, the official start. Looking forward to a football game coming up this weekend, and looking forward to the two guests we got coming on tonight. So all is well, my friend.
That is good to hear. Can I ask you about what you thought about LeBron playing with Bronny last night?
It was all a publicity stunt in my eyes. It was all manufactured by LeBron over the past 2 years, probably leading up to now, forcing the Lakers and no other teams to pick his son so that he would be happy to stay in LA and Jeannie Buss pleasing LeBron, I guess, as she has to do here. And JJ Redick really just along for the ride at this point in my eyes. I think he'll be a much better coach than Darvin Ham. But I don't really think Bronny deserved that moment. If we look back at the other father-son duos that I'm at least aware of, the Griffeys and did the Bonds play together as well? Barry
No, they did not. I don't think
they never
so.
played. I thought they did at one point. I think his father might have been a coach when he played on the Giants, maybe. But the Griffeys played together, but they were two great players, and that wasn't manufactured. And Ken Griffey Sr. wasn't forcing the owner to pick his son and calling other owners and telling them to stay away. And I don't think Bronny. We don't know if he would have even gotten picked if the Lakers weren't really had their hand forced. So for me, yes, it's cool for LeBron and his family, and I recognize that. But for me, it's not a big deal, and it's manufactured, and I don't like it.
Were you shocked that they beat the Timberwolves?
Not really. I mean, the Timberwolves are going to take some time to mesh, getting Julius Randle and DiVincenzo from the Knicks. Rudy Gobert did not look too sharp last night. He was still, probably having the effects from the Olympics, getting slammed on by LeBron and AD. He pretty much got the same treatment last night. I think Anthony Edwards is obviously one of the best up-and-coming players, but this year playing without Cat, that's going to be a big change, I think, for him. Julius Randle, I think, is a good player, but just a different player from Cat. So I think the Lakers, they might probably fall into that 7, 8, 9 range again. They have pretty much the same team as they did last year. It'll really just come down to if they play better under the new coach here.
Well, the Knicks, I had it on for a little bit, and at plus 6.5, I thought that was a bargain. And they got completely bent over last night in the Celtics conquest to repeat, which I'm still like trying to scratch my head and figure out how in the hell the Dallas Mavericks won the West last year. But again, I know you're an NBA fan, Rick. I find it, out of everything that I watch in the fall, I'm watching football, obviously. College football, the NFL takes precedence. I'm a little bit excited for the Knicks because there's been a rejuvenation, and I do love Mikal Bridges is one of my favorite players in the league. I love what Jalen Brunson has done. I've always liked Cat. I know a lot of people really don't like him, and I think he's had a history with Tom Thibodeau. Obviously, Dante DiVincenzo now has a history with Tom Thibodeau. I had to turn it off. There's college football on in my household. I always have it on. And I might get to Kennesaw State and Liberty tonight. I don't know if you saw what the Celtics did last night, but I know it's one game. And it does not make a season, and a season does not make one game. But I thought the Knicks might have looked better. It was pretty impressive. Did you catch that? And what were your thoughts about the Celtics starting 1-0 in this title defense?
Yeah, I mean, they have to be the favorite. I think Porzingis is even going to be out for a while again. But they have the most loaded roster, and the Knicks kind of tinkering with what I thought was already a good roster and adding Mikal Bridges, whose jump shot looks like a Tesla robot shooting a basketball right now. I don't know what he did to his jump shot in the offseason, but he basically gets it and just launches it like this now, where he used to have a beautiful shot. So much like the Timberwolves, who are part of that trade, I think it's going to take the Knicks some time. Cat is going to have to play down low more than he has in the previous few seasons, where he had Gobert protecting him. Now he's going to be the one that's going to have to bang down there, because the Knicks also lost Isaiah Hartenstein,
yeah,
to the Thunder. So it's going to be a transformative time for the Knicks. They got some nice pieces, but I'm really looking at Milwaukee in the East this year to have a better season. I think Dame and the Greek Freak are going to mesh together after a year together. And I'd like to think Philadelphia would be better also, but their two main guys aren't even healthy to start the season. And we know that Paul George has always had problems, and along with Embiid in the playoffs, just making it through a series, let alone a whole playoffs. When I look over on the West, like you're mentioning, the Mavs, but I like Denver to probably be at the top again. I think Westbrook will be a nice addition, even though I'm not a huge fan of his. The West is just loaded, though, up and down to me, really. I think San Antonio could even make a jump this year and possibly get into the bubble. So it's going to be exciting. And I guess one of the dark horse teams for me is the Pelicans. I really like Brandon Ingram. They added Murray from Atlanta via trade, where he was having to play off of the wing of Trae Young, and now he's going to go back to his natural position with the ball and able to distribute for Zion, CJ McCollum, and others. So it'll be exciting. I got some college schedule stuff I could talk about if you want to move that way.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. I do want to throw this out there. 5-0 Liberty was at 0-6 Kennesaw State. Kennesaw, Georgia's outside Atlanta. I think it's in the Atlanta metro area. I've never been to Georgia. I've been all over the country. I've never been there. And I will actually be connecting through there next week. Not next week, in a couple of weeks when I head to New Jersey. Kennesaw State had never beaten a FBS team until tonight. And Liberty was 26.5 point favorites. And Kennesaw State was up 27-17 at one point, and they beat them tonight in Conference USA action. Weekday Conference USA, as they call it. And I love it. I don't know when Maction's coming around, if it has been back, unless they completely did away with it. But switching gears, because we are predominantly a college football show, Rick, what basketball scheduling do you have to talk about?
I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about with the changes of over this past year of the ACC expanding, right, and the Big 12 expanding, and these power conferences getting larger. I had listened to Tom Moser's latest podcast, Top of the Mountain, with Rocco Miller, who is a bracketologist and analyst, and also does some of the scheduling, and had a hand in helping UNM and VCU get their 1-1 schedule done. But what they were talking about is just how now that these conferences have expanded and have more teams, and how it's going to affect the smaller conferences like the A10, the American, and the Mountain West, and how it's going to probably lessen the amount of chances that these small conferences have to get multi-bid teams in, because these bigger conferences now are going to have more higher rated wins on their hands. And what these teams in these big conferences are doing in their early schedule is usually loading it up with easy teams. If you look at the Big 12 last year, most of their teams were 8-0, 9-0 heading into conference. And the reason they do that is because they know when the tournament selection time comes that the selection committee does not like to select teams at large that have an under 500 record. If we look at a team like Oklahoma last year, I think they were one game under 500, but they probably deserved to get in, but probably because of that record, they didn't. So looking at Boise State this year, they're playing a much softer schedule than they had last year. They do play Clemson. They do play a tournament in the Cayman Islands, but one of the strongest team that Tamari is familiar with, Rutgers, has actually dropped out of that tournament, and much weakening the teams there. So the Power 5 teams are being encouraged to just play each other and squeeze out leagues like the Mountain West, because they know when it comes time for that selection that if they have a loss versus one of these mid-major conferences, it doesn't look good. And Pitino has talked about that both at Media Day and on his latest interviews about how it's hard to get teams, to come play at the Pit for that very reason. But what UNM has done, like we've talked about time and time again, is really load up the schedule for this year. Last year, the really only big out-of-conference game they had was early versus St. Mary's. House was out. I was at that game in person up here in Moraga, and they just got burned. It was like 15-0 early on. They could never recover, and the place was sold out, and just a crazy atmosphere there. So this year they've loaded up. We know they have UCLA, who I think is going to be one of the top 25 teams, if they're not already rated in the country. St. John's, Rocco Miller, who was on that podcast, has them as the 18th rated team. So I think when you look at those two games, they're great opportunities. And I really think the UCLA game, being on a neutral site, being early in the year, I think that's one the Lobos need to capitalize on. It's going to be pretty difficult to go into St. John's, fly across the country, and probably get a win there. But, if they take it down to the wire, and it's a close game, I think that will still be in their favor at the end of the year. VCU, obviously, will, like I mentioned, they'll do a one play there this year and back at the Pit next year. Very similar in stature to UNM. Their arena holds about 14,000 as well. Pretty good team over the last 10 years here. And then Arizona State in that tournament in Palm Springs, and then they'll either get St. Mary's or USC. So right away they'll be thrown into the flames, but they really need to capitalize and win some of those games, right, if they're going to make the most of this hard schedule. And Arizona State definitely should be a winnable game. They're probably one of the bottom teams in the Big 12 this year. Tamari, I don't know if you've looked at the Big 12 yet, but to me, and based on what I've heard, they're probably at the bottom of the pack.
They got top 25 votes.
Arizona State?
Arizona State got 2 top 25 votes. I was just about to say that.
Well, maybe that'll be better for New Mexico. If the better they are, the better for New Mexico. So there's plenty of chances this year for New Mexico to stand out, where last year there wasn't. And a lot of the other teams in conference this year aren't going to have the opportunities that New Mexico has. San Diego State will get Gonzaga again. I believe they did win at Gonzaga last year.
They did.
They'll get to play Cal. That'll be here in San Jose and not in Berkeley at some type of tournament. And then they'll be at the Players Era Festival, where they'll get Creighton, Oregon, and Texas A&M, who are all tournament caliber teams. So San Diego State will have a lot of opportunity early. But that we heard this morning, that young gentleman that Ryan and Jacob interviewed last year from San Diego State, Reese Waters, returning preseason all-conference player, will be out with a stress fracture in his leg, 6 to 8 weeks. So if you really look at that, we're probably looking at January by the time he comes back. And one would have to wonder if he would even medically redshirt possibly, if it gets, too far down the road and he's into rehab. But a huge loss for San Diego State, Ryan. And just any thoughts about Reese Waters going down?
He didn't play in that scrimmage they had against UCLA, and they won. I just feel, with what I know, and I'm not going to dissect it again, I didn't play basketball and I'm not Brian Dutcher, is the fact that, I don't know, he seems to get the most out of his teams, just not his players, but his teams. If you're looking at a January timeframe, obviously that's good for right before conference play or in the thick of conference play. I imagine they'll be there. I mean, I'm giving a cliche answer. I think it hurts them a little bit. You have to probably tinker with your rotation, your starting lineup. Obviously, he was going to be a starting player for them. I don't know. I think Brian Dutcher he'll figure it out. And I think the more I've watched college basketball, and it goes to football, I don't think these coaches know what they have with their players. With what they have to plug and play in the reality of NIL. I could be eating these words here on October 23rd when we're talking in January or February, but I think that Brian Dutcher knows what he's doing, and I think San Diego State will be there. I'm not sure who's going to step up. Again, I was excited to talk to Miles Bird last week at Mountain West Conference Media Days because although he did it late, and it's that meme where Chris Paul hits a big shot to pull the Suns within 42, you're still playing in a hostile environment in the pit. He hit a couple threes late in that game in that huge victory, right after the New Year on CBS on that Saturday morning. I expect, Dutch to get the most out of his players. Again, I'm not X's and O's. I didn't play basketball. I love watching college basketball and losing money on it, but I don't expect San Diego State to miss a beat. Again, they are the team that has gone the farthest in this tournament the last 2 years. They have a Sweet 16 appearance and a national finalist appearance. Rick, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, and the more I heard Brian Dutcher talk at Media Day, the more I grew to love him. And what he said on Field of 68, I think he said in the last 2 years, they're not 7-2, they're 7 in UConn, right?
Yeah, he's right.
I mean, that's the only team they've lost to. So if they wouldn't have run into UConn, obviously they were in the title game, but who knows, they might have won a title. So just the confidence that he had going around, making the rounds that day, and then the short conversation I got to have with him just behind the thing there. He's one hell of a guy, some type of confidence, some type of leader. You could tell the players gravitate towards him. I mean, he's wearing Jordan Travis Scott shoes that are shoes you can't find, that are maybe 18-year-olds are drooling over. So he knows what he's doing. And I couldn't agree more with you that he gets the best players because he's the best recruiter. He recruited the Fab Five, and he knows what to do with them once he gets them on the court. So I look for a player like BJ Davis to step up along with Miles Bird and others that we've mentioned. And Magoon Guath is just expected to be a force for them as well as a face-up player. But Ryan, I wanted to kind of just hit on the bottom of the conference really quick since I was talking about the top teams. And
go right ahead.
I think in order for the Mountain West to have the strength that they did last year, they need some of what we consider the bottom tier teams, the San Jose, Wyoming, Air Force, and Fresno, to win some of their out of conference games, right? So that when they get into conference, they're not rated too low. I think we've all agreed that San Jose State might be our dark horse, maybe out of the bottom tier to come up and out of there with Tim Miles. They'll get Rob Viola back, a big man, transfer Josh Udeje, and then the transfer from UCLA, McClendon. And then I also like old Sundax. He did a fantastic job at Green Bay last year, changing the culture. And they have a great home court advantage in Wyoming, and that's always a tough place to play. So I was just wondering, out of the bottom teams, if you had a favorite that we haven't really given love to yet.
I'm going to be biased. It was Wyoming between the two players that we talked to, and I forgot. I think it was Cole Henry was his name, and Kobe Newton.
Yeah,
Mountain West Conference.
it was.
Yeah, it was. Okay. They were fun to talk to. I feel bad now because I already forgot their names. I'm always going at a million miles an hour and doing 10 things during the day. I would say it was those guys. The energy with Sundance Wicks. I mean, when I walked over, I was going to get something to drink, and I walked by the field of 68 guys. And I'm going to try to effort Jeff Goodman here in a week. It's probably really busy for him. And I wanted to show a schedule that he posted up. Wyoming, I mean, I have love for Joe Scott. You have to remember they came in here and beat UNM. I think they caught UNM snoozing. A win's a win. I thought that had completely killed any at-large tournament bid rather than an automatic bid. And obviously it showed with the the committee. Yeah, I'd say it's Wyoming. I think Josh Udeji and Will McClendon from San Jose State. Tim Miles kind of resurrected CSU back, 15, 16 years ago. He went to Nebraska. I think he got them to the tournament once. Obviously, with what Fred Hoiberg is doing there now, I think it's a phenomenal, Nebraska's on the up and up. And obviously, Neff and I's favorite player last year, one of our favorite players, Tamanaga. They got ass blasted by Texas A&M in the first round. I've heard of Josiah Alec on the show, and he responded. I need to get him on. But yeah, I'm looking at those teams to make some noise. I don't think, I know Joe Scott has been very outspoken about what NIL has done to the academies, although Army and Navy are both undefeated. And my segue into that is they play on December 14th. But if you look at the schedule for men's college basketball, on December 14th, here's Jeff Goodman at Goodman Hoops, and you can find him with the field of 68. You get one day to go to on Saturday, December 14th. Which one are you picking? Throw that out. Texas A&M versus Purdue and Indy. That's at CBS at 10 a.m. Auburn versus Ohio State in Atlanta. That's at 11. Xavier at Cincinnati. That's 2. They're rivals in Cincinnati. NC State and Kansas. UCLA at Arizona, because they are no longer in the same conference. Louisville and Kentucky, 3:15 our time. Tennessee and Illinois, 3:30. Gonzaga at UConn in Madison Square Garden. I would say that's the game of the day. At MSG, 6 o'clock on Fox. Creighton at Alabama. What Nate Oates has done there. That game's at 6:30. Rick, before we get to Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News, any of those games stand out to you, and what do you know about any of those teams? I mean, Gonzaga and UConn is the game for me that day. I think there's a comment, Boise State plays St. Mary's that day, which is pretty cool.
I'm going to admit something to you, Ryan, and to everyone that watches this show. I do not spend a lot of time watching any other conference of basketball. I'm locked in this past year on Mountain West. I'm locked in this year. I've never been more locked in. I have a feel for all these teams after meeting with them. All I can say about this schedule is when I look at UCLA at Arizona, all I could think about is Bill Walton would have been calling that game, and I'll be really missing hearing his voice on that day. I got one more basketball though note, and that'll be a great day because Lobos aren't playing, right? So we can just take that all in.
I don't think so. Let us find out. They play Western New Mexico that game at 2:00.
The one other thing on Lobo basketball related that I wanted to mention that we put out on Twitter today is Mr. Sebastian Forsling, who was on the Lobos for I think 2 or 3 seasons. Lobo big man from Sweden, who still did have eligibility after last year, but decided not to play college basketball anymore and went back home to Sweden, is playing basketball for the Norrköping Dolphins in the Basketligan, the highest professional basketball league in Sweden. And I believe they played 3 or 4 games so far. It looks like he's getting about 10 minutes a game. His dad sent me some highlights today. He's playing down low, obviously. He looks like he's lost some weight. He's moving pretty quickly. He was playing defense, blocking shots, had a nice putback, and made a free throw in his time out there in the last game. So it looks like he's, adding some skills to his game and doing well over there in Sweden, playing in the top league. So we'll see what he does this year.
We were all fans of his dad. I loved it. Going to take a quick commercial because he was staying up till 3 a.m. in Sweden, watch the games. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. It was a busy day again for him down in Las Cruces. Ryan Tamori, Rick Thompson, appreciate everybody watching. We'll be right back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
All right, welcome back to the show. My name is Ryan Tamori, along with Ricky Thompson.
Richard.
All right, we will now turn our attention down south. And hey, it was an exciting game that I was in Vegas and lost money on because I did not trust New Mexico State at all. And let me fix this real quick as I also have to produce the show. All right. He is a reporter, Boomer Sooner from the Las Cruces Sun News. And I still have to say your name slowly, Nick, because, I can't get anything right anymore. Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. Nick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy day, as you said, but every day seems like a busy day now over here in Las Cruces. So I mean, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm hanging in there. Rick's hanging in there too. I think Rick's feeling really hot, really, really good. High as a kite. Story on former NMSU b-ball player Dr. Bradley taking a plea deal in his sexual assault case. He will now testify against former teammates in trial next February as part of the deal. An agreement in deal states his sentence will only be probation. Obviously, this stems from everything that transpired under Greg Hires, tumultuous 5-6 months down in Las Cruces. You can find this article on Las Cruces Sun News, and you can follow Nick at Nick_Coppola__ on Twitter. Nick, what do you know about this story? And I'm sure you're still learning a lot about it because you were not there when this transpired 2 years ago.
Yeah, I am learning a lot as we go, but I do know that this is a pretty significant development in the legal and criminal proceedings for this case. So, for context, 3 former New Mexico State players have been criminally charged for actions that have arisen out of this scandal, and that trial is set to go forth next February. Excuse me. In the Las Cruces District Courts. However, prosecutors seem to have gotten one of them to flip, and that is Dr. Bradley. He has, like you said, he entered into a plea deal. He agreed to plead down to 2 counts of disorderly conduct, which are just petty misdemeanors. And instead of facing over 20 years in prison, which is what he which is what he faced if he would have gotten convicted next February. He now is likely only going to get probation because that was the agreement for the sentence between his defense team and prosecutors. So a pretty good deal for Dr. Bradley. Also, probably good for prosecutors as well, as they're going to get another witness. He is going to testify against what was it? DeShandre Washington and Kim Aiken. Those are the two former players that are still going to trial next February, and now Dr. Bradley is going to offer testimony against them. So yeah, he submitted the plea agreement Monday. He also originally pleaded not guilty as well, and so he changed his plea. He'll be permitted to travel within the U.S. as part of his deal, and the only two agreements as part of the deal are the sentence of probation and the fact that he provides a truthful statement in his testimony. So basically, one of them folded, and then they're now going to work for the state of New Mexico. Probably good for Bradley, as seen he avoids a lot of time in prison, and yeah, pretty big development, So we'll see what happens in the trial next February with the other two.
I love that name, Dr. Bradley. What did New Mexico State have a statement today? I apologize, I didn't get to the story. I just saw the headline and what you sent me. Did New Mexico State have a statement, or did they stay, mum's the word, did they stay quiet?
Yeah, they've been quiet. Their whole statement around this has been they're not going to comment on pending litigation, which is understandable. But yeah, they didn't have anything to say about this today. So.
Well, let's switch to, unless Rick, you have a question about New Mexico State basketball.
I'm trying to find it. Nick, first, nice to meet you. Thanks for always coming on the show. It's a pleasure to finally speak with you. I saw New Mexico State did have a big basketball signing maybe 2 weeks ago. Omar Smith, a 3-star recruit. It looks like 7th-ranked player in the state of Maryland. Do you know anything else about him? And does it seem like New Mexico State might be getting, some eyes back on them after, kind of struggling the last years and getting some better recruits coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good get for him. He's a 3-star, like you said, top 10 player in his state of Maryland, and yeah, it's a really good get for New Mexico State, especially after everything that they've been through. It's good for them that they're still going to get solid recruits. I believe he had an interest from, I think, UMass and then Providence and then other schools just around his area. So he's got to be coming pretty far from home. But he's got a good skill set. He's a 6'4" shooting guard. So he should fit pretty well for New Mexico State's. Good recruit for them. I don't know much about him other than just maybe what's publicly available. I imagine we'll know more once he actually gets to Las Cruces. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good get for New Mexico State to get a guy like that after everything that's happened.
Thanks.
I have to ask you about what just transpired in Kennesaw, Georgia. Did you catch any of Kennesaw State beating Liberty, and your thoughts?
Last time I checked, the score was halftime and they were tied. So you were telling me that they had beaten them for the first time, and that's pretty crazy. That's Kennesaw's first win, right?
That is not only Kennesaw's first win of the season, first win in Conference USA. They were 0-10 against FBS schools.
Oh, wow. And then they beat Liberty for their first one. Go figure. Wow. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty shocking. I mean, I knew Liberty probably wasn't as good as they were last year, but they were still the best team in Conference USA. And for them to lose at all against Conference USA, let alone against Kennesaw State, very, very much the worst team in the conference coming into today. I mean, that's pretty shocking. So, I mean, I imagine it's good for teams like Western Kentucky who are competing with them for the conference. I'm not sure if it'll affect New Mexico State's chances. I don't know if they didn't have a chance to win the conference anyway at this point. But yeah, I mean, really good win for Kennesaw though. I mean, obviously a really bad loss for Liberty. So yeah, I'm shocked by that. I saw the score at halftime. I did not know they won. So that's really surprising.
Not good for us. Minus 26 taking the points. Conference USA has really killed me and my buddy Jacob the last 2 weeks. We were in Las Vegas, Nevada last week for Mountain West Conference basketball games. Mountain West Conference basketball media days. And the West Coast Conference was there. And when we were on the plane, New Mexico State and La Tech were playing, and La Tech looked like they could have cared less to be in Las Cruces. They pulled out. New Mexico State gets their second win of the year, and they beat Louisiana Tech in overtime 33-30. Just Mike Washington scores the game winner. Your thoughts just overall on that game? And New Mexico State played pretty well.
Yeah, they did play pretty well. It's pretty impressive. They improved on offense. They improved on defense as well. A big thing for them on defense was rushing, or they weren't able to stop rushing. And Louisiana Tech got 128 yards rushing, but they also ran the ball 44 times for 2.9 yards per carry. So I think they did pretty well to stop the run, all things considered. Amiri Wiggins, I think that's how you say that name. He was held to just 63 yards rushing. He did have a touchdown, but 22 of his yards came on one carry. So for the vast majority of the game, they were able to hold him in check on the ground. And yeah, I mean, offense played pretty well as well. You know, Parker Waugh started because Santino Marucci had a concussion from the Jacksonville State game. But then eventually they went to Brandon Nunez, who was the fourth quarterback to play for them this season. He got in the third quarter when they went to kind of like a full house formation that they ran a lot with Eli Stowers and Diego Pavia last year. And did a lot of option plays out of that and a lot of rushing out of that. And in the third quarter, Brandon Nunez got his first rushing touchdown out of that, but he got to play the final three drives of the fourth quarter in overtime. And they ran that formation a lot, and he got another rush touchdown out of that, which was the one that tied the game and eventually sent it to overtime. And he played really well. You know, he only got 3 drives, he only got to throw 7 passes, but he was pretty efficient. You know, those were some of the best offensive drives that they've had all season. They all 3 ended in points, and you know that's a win that they really did need, especially in the way that it happened. You know, you tie the game late, then you block a field goal to send it into overtime, and then you have a pretty emphatic overtime victory. I mean, some of the coaches were in the booth next to the press box, and they just went absolutely crazy after Mike Washington scored that game winner. So not only did they need to win, they needed to win like that just to get a little momentum and a little bit of confidence back. And the schedule for them looks somewhat manageable going forward. They play FIU next. FIU was also a 2-win team. And they have to play Texas A&M and Western Kentucky coming up. They'll have to probably beat one of them in order to make a bowl game. Or they will have to beat one of them to make a bowl game. Those will be 2 very tough games. They get Western Kentucky at home, and they played a lot better at home this season than they have on the road. They've gone on the road and have gotten blown out every single time. They played at home, and it's either been close wins or it's either been wins or close losses, because I mean, they only lost by single digits to Liberty. They only lost by 10 to New Mexico. And their only 2 wins this season have come at home against Southeast Missouri and now Louisiana Tech. So they think they can rally. You know, they've done it before. You know, in 2022, they started 1-5 and then reached a bowl game. So maybe they could do it this time. It's a little bit tougher this time around. But, you know, this is definitely a good win to get some momentum for that.
Well, you answered my Brandon Nunez question. I will ask you about Mike Washington. He was suspended for missing a team meeting, and he scores the game winner. I mean, that's talk about a topsy-turvy night.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised not to see him go out there for the first quarter. They had Tim Gans and Isaiah Roos and some of their backup running backs come in and take snaps because Monty Watkins also didn't play because he's in concussion protocol after an injury against Jacksonville State. And so I just asked him, you know, what happened? He said, well, he missed a team meeting and he was suspended for the first quarter because, you know, Tony Sanchez didn't think that he could tolerate something like that, and he had to suspend them. He said he was only about a minute or so late, but he still decided to suspend him anyway. And it wasn't really his night until that game-winning touchdown. You know, I mean, he only had, I think, 7 carries for 17 something yards heading into that carry. But then he got the ball again, and then he scored. He ended up being the hero. So, you know, pretty good story right there. And, you know,
I guess he comes from the Tom Coughlin school of if you're 10 minutes early or late. Rick, were you going to ask a question?
No, I just saw, Nick, that you were saying they could start 1 of 3 quarterbacks this week. And last game they used a combination of the 2. If you're the coach, who are you starting, Nick?
Oh, man, that's a good question because, you know,
It's a $1 million question around college football right now.
It is, it seems very peculiar too that, we're 7 games into the season and they still have a quarterback battle going on and they still don't really have a full-time starter. Brandon Nunez did look really good, but that was only very much a small sample size. Santino Mariucci has had his ups and downs. Parker Watt as well. He was fine against Louisiana Tech, but he's also had a lot more downs this season than ups. I don't know. I mean, I would go with Nunez just because even in those 3 drives he did look better. I wouldn't be surprised to see Santino Mariucci. I think he still does have the best start to finish performance for New Mexico State this season against New Mexico, in which he played pretty well. And like I said, Brandon Nunez only got 3 drives, but Nunez also has a lot of the momentum right now because he got in for those 3 drives and he led the team into victory and in a game they really needed, and he looked really good while doing it. And he also ran the ball pretty well too. One of the reasons they started Parker Watt at the start of the season was because they thought he'd give him that dual threat ability. It hasn't quite happened yet, but Brandon Nunez provided it. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He got 5 yards to carry, 30 rushes on 6 carries. So he ran the ball pretty well. It allows them to do that full house formation that they seem to really like. They haven't pulled it out until Nunez got in the game, so they seem more comfortable with Nunez than any other quarterback. So I go with Nunez, but I wouldn't be surprised to see any of the 3 against FIU. And maybe they've already picked out a starter and they're just forcing FIU to prepare for all 3, which I would not be surprised with at all. But if I had to make the decision, I'd go with Nunez.
I would just run Wildcat with McGowan and Washington at this point because they have 6 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions. But I'm not coach.
Yeah, I mean, McGowan is the only player on offense doing anything for them every single game, so that's probably not a bad idea.
Once again, they have the plans to invade Normandy. They don't want anybody to know. They have struggled with sacks this year. I'm going to beat that joke into the ground. They have NMSU has struggled with sacks this year. Kel Edwards himself had 4 against Louisiana Tech. I'm all about the defensive line, if you could never tell. How big of a night was that for them to do that? Again, who cares? Caring who was the opponent, I guess it doesn't matter. That the fact that they were able to hit a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean that's the first time they've had that many sacks this season. That's the first time they've had that many sacks. They had 5 sacks total. That's the first time they've had that many, I think, since 2017 or 2018 when they played Liberty. So it's been a while since they've had a night like that on the defensive line, period, let alone this season. And Kel Edwards had 0 sacks coming into the season at all. And he was a new transfer from Montana that they were pretty excited about, and he just hasn't really quite gotten the hang of it. And so the Louisiana Tech game, which is, has kind of been his coming out party, and he had 4 sacks on his own. It was a pretty good night in the trenches overall for New Mexico State. They didn't allow a sack on the offensive line, which is the first time they've done that all season. And so, yeah, I mean, they improved in a lot of areas. Defensive line is certainly one of them. And, Kel Edwards seemed pretty happy that he was able to get those 4 sacks because, they definitely could have used him, especially in the beginning of the game where he was really going off. And so, yeah, I mean, they've been excited about him all season. He hasn't quite performed to the level that they would have hoped. And so maybe this gets him going.
The defense did noticeably play better. I mean, I thought Louisiana Tech, I think the previous week they came off beating FIU, and they had they've got a very good run game. They do run the ball. It's Sonny Cumby, right? I love that name, or Sonny Crumby. I love that name. They didn't look so hot against UTEP last night. And Skylar Locklear got destroyed, which was an actual targeting call for once. He jumped up and threw the ball, and the Louisiana Tech guy just boom, hit him. You mentioned some other improvements. The defense was noticeably better. The passing looked good. What else did you take away from, in a 33-30 win that was improvement?
Yeah, definitely the offensive line. This was their first game with Shias Peeback, who's their all-conference left tackle. And so this is the first time all season that they've actually had a full-strength offensive line. they played noticeably better with it, as one would expect when you have your best offensive lineman back. They played better, and like I said, they didn't give up a sack, which is the first time that's happened all season. And they ran the ball pretty nice too. They had 160 rushing yards. They averaged over 4 yards a carry. They had 3 rushing touchdowns with Nunez and Mike Washington. Seth McGowan had an all right game on the ground as well. And so I mean, it just gave a little bit of their quarterbacks a little bit more time, which probably benefited Nunez more than did Parker Wad. But yeah, they talked all season about wanting to play better up there and wanting to be more physical and wanting to win that battle on the offensive line and the defensive line, and they did both of that. And so having that guy, I mean, they've been injured a lot this season. They've had a lot of key injuries to a lot of key positions, but Shiesty was definitely the biggest. Now that they have him back, they're a lot more confident there on the offensive line.
Lastly, they play FIU. FIU, I don't know why. I've watched a lot of them this year because I've bet on them. They play. They covered last night against.
I know why, because you love Pitbull.
Oh, we love Pitbull. And last night they were Vice U with that phenomenal field last night. But Dale with Pitbull Stadium. I can't. I'm crashing and burning on the joke. The defense, their defense ranks in the top half in Conference USA, and they've got a top 10 rusher. And Keyshawn Owens, I believe, is the running back. I think their starting quarterback got hurt, and MSU has struggled to stop the run. And by the way, this game is next Tuesday night. Is it in South Florida, Nick?
It is in Miami, yes.
Yeah, it is in Miami. Can you tell us how they expect to stop FIU and Keyshawn Owens? And I don't know who's starting a quarterback. I don't follow FIU that closely other than it being Pitbull Stadium.
Yeah, I'm not sure starting for FIU either, but I do know they got a good running back and they got an okay defense at least in terms of Conference USA standards, in which they rank in the top 5 in the top half of the conference, and so it doesn't necessarily bode well for New Mexico State, who has had offensive struggles and they've had struggles to stop the run, but they did noticeably improve in those aspects against Louisiana Tech, and they hope to build on that momentum, and maybe this is a turn, or maybe it's just a flash in the pan, but I think those will be the 2 battles to watch. And I think a lot will also depend on who starts a quarterback for them, because I feel like all 3 provide different things. All 3 can, or at least they would like to use their legs. Santino probably ran it a little bit more. Nunez, they can run it in a little bit more ways. Parker Watt's a bit chaos when he gets to run the football. Nunez in those 3 drives did throw the ball a little bit better. I would say Watt's probably the worst of the 3 in terms of throwing the football, and Mariucci's around kind of the middle in that. And like I said, a lot of what they do on offense will just depend on who they want to play at quarterback. I do expect McGowan to have a good game again, and obviously they need him to have a good game anytime they would like to win a game. And I'm interested to see how much their explosive passing game kind of comes into fruition. They did take a lot of deep shots, and they were successful doing that. They got one of their touchdowns was a deep 53-yarder to TJ Pride. They had another 45-yard reception to PJ Johnson. They got him in range to score one of their touchdowns, and so they were able to open the passing game up a lot more this time around. And so maybe that gives them confidence that they would like to do it again against FIU, because they've been lacking explosives for most of the season, or for pretty much all the season up to this point. So those are things they're looking for against FIU. It is a winnable game for them. I'm not sure what the betting line is right now for that game. But FIU is also a 2-win team, so they're in a similar situation as New Mexico State. So they're getting to a stretch where they'll have winnable games, and this is one of them for New Mexico State.
I will search that. His name is Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. Nick, I wish you were going to Miami. Thank you for joining us every Wednesday night. We appreciate your insight in New Mexico State athletics. I will bug you next Wednesday to recap FIU. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you. I wish I'm going to Miami. I need a vacation.
Just go anyway. Don't tell your bosses. Yeah. Nick, we appreciate it. Have a good one. That was Nick Coppola from Las Cruces Sun News. Quick commercial break. Paul Bonilla, Sean Reider of the Albuquerque Journal, who covers the New Mexico Lobos football team. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, and we are now joined by another young journalist who covers college football. You can read him every day in the Albuquerque Journal. His name is Mr. Sean Reider. Sean, how you doing? Thanks for joining us late on a Wednesday night.
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We appreciate it. I'm going to start here, and you can answer this, and I've seen what I can on Twitter since we haven't had you on in a while, and it'll be like a mid-season checkup. Please, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. What do you and do you not know about Andrew Henry?
Can you say that again real quick?
Sure. Can you hear me better now? Oh, you know what? Hold on again. The audio's screwed up. I'm going to take a quick commercial break.
I can kind of summarize what Sean had mentioned on his show with Jeff, if you'd like me to.
Go ahead. I'll give him a call again.
So my understanding is Andrew Henry played at a junior college before playing at the school he played prior to UNM. I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. And when he came to UNM last year, when he had
Sean, can you hear me? I don't know why I always have technical.
As we can hear Ryan in the background. Basically, after Andrew Henry had his injury last year, he thought that the school thought that he still had a year of eligibility. They went back and I believe looked at his first junior college year and deemed that did count as one of his years when he in fact thought, because it was a shortened season or something of that fact, that it might not count towards his eligibility. So it seems like he and UNM thought at some point last year that he would still have a season left to play, but obviously he did not.
We have Sean Reider back on the phone. Is it crazy distorted now, Sean?
No, it is not. Thank you. I appreciate you fixing that.
I don't know. You are the tech gremlin when we try to do things. I always appreciate your patient insight. What I was just asking, Rick kind of explained it now. I'll ask you, what do you know and not know about Andrew Henry's situation?
Yeah. So what I know, so earlier this season, Andrew told me Andrew wasn't playing for the first 3 or so games, right? I believe Auburn, Auburn was really the only time he saw legitimate offensive snaps, but didn't log a carry at that point. It was late in the game there. Andrew went to UNM's compliance department, or their compliance office, and said, I'm interested in redshirting, so I can preserve my year of eligibility and maybe find someplace new to play. I kind of don't have, I don't have a lot of time. I do need somewhere I can kind of perform and play and all that pretty normal stuff in college football. UNM's compliance office said, oh, well, you can't really do that. You already redshirted. I shouldn't say that they said that you can't do that. They just said, well, we're under the impression that you already redshirted. Andrew said, no, I never redshirted. A couple days later, or shortly after, I should say, they basically UNM's compliance department and Bronco Mendenhall sat down with Andrew and said, unfortunately, we did just find out that you are ineligible, and we'll do whatever we can to help you out. You can walk on senior night, but you can't practice. You can't play. Obviously, you're ineligible. It's just something that you have to do if you're an NCAA member institution, right? Because if you have, if you're using ineligible players and all that, you're gonna have to forfeit wins or forfeit something, right? Andrew said that he was under the impression that he had another year of eligibility because last year, Danny Gonzalez, he alleges, Danny Gonzalez in UNM's compliance department said that they told him that he had another year of eligibility. What we found out in reporting this was that at some point down the line, Andrew started his career at Fort Scott Community College in Kansas, and he played 1 year there. And that year they had to forfeit wins because of use of an ineligible player. And Fort Scott shut down, I think, 2 years later in 2021 due to just a lot of financial stuff. And just it was hard for them to remain competitive in that conference, a really good JUCO conference. And Andrew thought that he got a competition waiver so that year wouldn't have counted from Fort Scott. Turns out he didn't. And the paperwork also from Fort Scott also reflected at the time that Andrew did not use a full year of eligibility. He definitely did. If you check the website right now, he played 7 games that year. That does count as a full year of eligibility. And that's just kind of the situation now. It was kind of a miscommunication in the paperwork between both institutions, UNM and Fort Scott. And it's really unfortunate. I know Andrew's really well liked among a lot of UNM fans and people close to the program and all that. So definitely unfortunate, but it just kind of is what it is there.
I appreciate that answer, and I'll start here, and then my buddy Rick Thompson
Richard
will be joining. We'll probably chime in on some questions, but I don't know if I necessarily want to start with Utah State, but how impressive is this offense from somebody who is always around this program?
Yeah, really impressive. I think the thing that is stood out to me over this 3-game winning streak, and even when they weren't winning, was just the fact that it feels like things have been added, on a game-to-game basis and all that, particularly in the run game, right? New Mexico State, that's when they kind of rolled out Nakari Rogers as kind of the hammer in the backfield, their power back, and worked swimmingly that night. It is just incredibly impressive, and it's almost hard to keep finding ways to describe Devin Dampier and what he's able to do and what he brings to the team, right? He can will them in the passing game to a certain degree, and he's definitely done it this year, and he can will them in the run game. I'm very he's hard to bring down. I thought Utah State, honestly, in the first half, really, I thought they did the best job, maybe even not the full first half, but really kind of the first quarter. I thought they did the best job out of any team this season, in terms of kind of corralling him in the backfield and maybe not bringing him down, but not, opening up lanes and all that. I thought they were really disciplined, and that kind of faded over the game. But he's a nightmare to game plan for in certain respects. He can just bring it on a game-to-game basis. So, yeah, and Bronco Mendenhall's always mentioned when you have a quarterback, you have a chance to win, and they certainly have a quarterback right now.
What was going through your mind kind of on the comeback? I felt like you've covered the team for 2 years. You're talking to 2 UNM alumni. You're talking to somebody that covered the program, has watched pushing 40. I still feel like same old Lobos. But my question to you, Sean, is it felt like they came out of the game nonchalant. Devin Dampier kind of threw a pretty bad pick to start the game on the first drive. And then they don't quit. And I appreciate that. Seeing the comeback in person, what were you making of it?
Yeah, I was making in my head, I was probably thinking, okay, well, when am I going to ditch the Lobos lose gamer and switch to the Lobos win story, right? Because you got to rewrite that, midway, not even midway through the game in the fourth quarter and all that too. It was, it just, they went down 17 early, 17-0, after Devin threw that kind of underthrown ball 4 plays in and all that as well. And you didn't think in your head at that point that they're going to be out of it. I felt like I had seen enough from Utah State's defense going in that they were not going to hold New Mexico down the entire game. And it did seem like it was more of just a slow start from the offense. So you felt that they were going to come back from that for sure. But then they went down 16 points, in the second half too. And there was that swing at the end of the first half as well, kind of the 4-point swing there with the Brand Epps offsides and the field goal that led to the TD and all that. And this is still a young team. It's a team that is very much still learning how to win. And we haven't seen them come back in any meaningful capacity yet. And and they just kept putting it together. I think the thing that stood out to me in the second half is just how well they ran the ball. Devin, Eli, Javen Jacobs did some really nice things too. And how they kind of got after it there and kind of rode that to the comeback. And obviously, it's a much maligned defense. And, statistically, it is going to finish the season as one of the worst defenses in the country, no matter, but if they're playing at the rate that they are, it's just going to be that way. But you've kind of kept hearing from players and coaches that, hey, we think there's progress being made. If you can't see it in the numbers, like we see it on a play-to-play basis. And that showed up big time. With the 4th and 1 stop, and then obviously Demetri Johnson dropping back and getting that interception over the middle. So, yeah, it was a heck of a game to cover for sure. I kind of don't even know how to describe it beyond that.
Rick, do you have any questions?
Sure. Hey, Sean, Ricky, thanks for joining us again here. I know you didn't want to show your face. We really think you're a good-looking guy, but I'm just playing. If looking ahead, I saw you went on a Colorado State podcast today. Thanks for doing that. I thought it was really good. What can you tell us as Lobo fans that we should be worried about with Colorado State? We know they have a pretty good quarterback and a decent running back, and they've lost their best receiver and one of the best receivers in conference history in Torrey Horton. But is this a defense that Lobos can move the ball on, or is it going to be a stronger task than they've seen the last 2 or 3 weeks here?
I think it's going to be a stronger task. I think this is probably a defense that you could categorize with Air Force, or maybe more of like Fresno State's defensive class, honestly. I think it's not going to be easy. This is very much a Colorado State defense that I've seen that's kind of, for Colorado State as a whole, offense and defense, it was a rocky start to the season and things were just kind of not there. But, I do think this is a defense that's settling in. That's what I've kind of seen in the San Jose State game and the Air Force game they played. And I would expect that to continue. They do have good players. I think the one thing that I reported, I believe it was in today's paper, and it's also online too. It's UNM is going to. They haven't had a lot of offensive injuries, really. Mostly everybody has kind of stayed healthy. They had season-ending injuries to Juwan Singletary and Tevin Shaw, 2 offensive linemen, but the offensive line has just kind of kept on chugging regardless. But I do think, if I had to guess right now, they're probably going to be without Nakari Rogers and Javen Jacobs. I saw Nakari Rogers in a boot on practice on Tuesday, and then Javen Jacobs in a sling. Neither were even remotely practicing and all that. They weren't doing the turquoise jerseys and all that, kind of off to the side where they're maybe working out while everybody else is practicing. They just were at practice and that. So I do think those injuries are certainly going to certainly affect the game to a certain degree. I still think UNM should be able to run it pretty well with Eli Sanders and Soljay Maeva-Peters, but it's just different usage. They'll have to lean a little bit more on Devin, I think, and that's where things can maybe get tricky for UNM.
You mentioned in today's paper that New Mexico, they're more physical and confident. I watched the Air Force game. They looked like they were going to knock, them out like 30-40-0, and really kind of stagnant in the second half, and they survived in Colorado Springs 21-13. Is this, and again with the schedule, is this somebody that UNM has seen? Is there anybody similar to who they've seen thus far in the season? I don't know what I'm asking. I'm just trying to come up with a question on the spot.
Seen at this point in the season, man, that's a good question.
Thank you.
It is a good question, honestly. And it's interesting too, right? Because offensively, we've all seen the branding for Colorado State under Jay Norvell and Matt Mummy and all that, like Fort Air Raid, like we're an air raid team, and this is what we want to be. And this year, like we kind of talked to Bronco a little bit about it too. Like they're not. I mean, they're way more of a pro style offense. And I talked with Kevin Lytle, who's a Colorado State reporter for the Colorado today, and he said basically, Norvell kind of talked about this week. It's like, yeah, like, I mean, we were racking up all these great stats and we were passing for 1 million yards, but we weren't winning games, and we just decided to change things, make it more traditional to actually win games. And so far, it's working. We'll see how it holds down the stretch, obviously, but yeah, I would probably say maybe New Mexico State. In the sense that, I mean, it's a pretty solid offensive line. If you added a good quarterback to New Mexico State, I should say, because I do think Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, I mean, he's dealt with the turnover issues a ton, but he's kind of ticking down on that more and more. And part of that is just like he's not throwing it 1 million times as well, too. Like I think Avery Morrow, I think, is a little bit more in that McGowan mold. Or maybe even that Razul Faison mold, honestly. But Avery Morrow is a really good back. I mean, he's been very productive for Colorado State. Again, after kind of a slower start and with all the offensive changes too. So, yeah, I would say, I don't know if that's really a great answer at all, but I mean, they're more pro style, more, kind of West Coast style, straightforward in that sense. And that's ironic to say, right? The West Coast offense is really not that straightforward if you get into the weeds a bit. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Sean, I could just tell by the way you talk about football, you know the X's and O's, the defensive side. We pretty much know what we're going to get now at this point in the year. But if you were coaching, is there anything schematically that you think the Lobos could do differently? The past few weeks, I've talked about maybe bringing more pressure from the secondary like they did early against Montana State to at least disrupt the passing game a little bit. Do you think they should try that, or do you have any other ideas of anything they could do differently?
I think you could maybe see that this week. I think you could. I mean, with Utah State, it was just they needed bodies in the back end for sure. Like I didn't know if that was going to be the right call, but I think you could see that. It does feel like, and I think you'll see their more base defensive alignment this week compared to what they did against Utah State. But that being said, I mean, bringing pressure is still manufacturing pressure, I should say, has still been kind of an issue with them. And I do think that is, for as much defensive improvement as, players and coaches have said they've seen. And, you can kind of look at some things and say, okay, well, I see it there. Pressure, I mean, it is not this team's strong suit right now at the moment. And, I remember talking to defensive coordinator Nick Howell, and he said, some years we have stud edge rushers and some years we just don't. We figure out a way to make it work. And this is definitely the latter. And it really hasn't quite worked at this point, honestly, with maybe the exception of like Montana State, New Mexico State. But even then, the numbers and the consistency was kind of off there.
Two more questions for you here. We're joined by Sean Reider of the Albuquerque Journal, unless Rick breaks on in again. My second to last one is, have you thought about how Montana State might come back and bite them in the butt?
I have, but I think they need to I see. Look, I don't think right now, sitting here in my kitchen talking on the phone, I don't think right now, just off of everything I've seen from both teams, I don't think New Mexico beats Colorado State this weekend, right? So I'm kind of expecting 3-5. I think if they lost to Wyoming at home or something like that, and that kind of took them out of the equation more or less, or required them to be perfect down the stretch or whatever, then yeah, I think that's when you kind of have the Montana State thing. But at the same time, it still feels like there's a lot of football to be played, and I do think there are certainly more than enough gettable opportunities down the stretch for UNM. I mean, really, they should absolutely be competitive in every single game, even with Washington State coming to town, although I think that's probably the least likely opportunity for a win there. But at the same time, I think we're we got to set the table before that discussion yet. And even then, honestly, I mean, I know people really want to bowl, and I know players and coaches definitely want to bowl too. But at the same time, I mean, if they crack 5 wins or something like that and they come this close or whatever, I think that's still probably pretty impressive and considered a success by a lot of people.
I would agree with that. How big of a game is UNLV Boise State? Is it on your radar, and who do you expect to win that game?
Oh, it is 100% on my radar. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that on Friday night, man. Yeah, it feels like it's like the G5 game of the century, or the game of the century of the week or whatever. Yeah, no, I'm really, really interested in. To me, this game feels way more about Maddox Madsen and Ashton Genty. I really think this could be something for Maddox Madsen. And honestly, and some of the Boise State receivers as well too. Curious to see, what defense kind of shows up that night for UNLV and Boise State as well. I think they're both really good defenses too. So it's definitely on my radar. I'm really looking forward to it. If I had to lean right now, it's kind of weird because about 3 weeks ago, I was thinking, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was thinking I think UNLV is knocking off Boise. But right now, I'm swinging back to Boise. But I think it'll be a heck of a game.
He is Sean Reider of the Albuquerque Journal. Sean, midweek, late night, I appreciate your time. You can check him out on the Journal online or wherever you can find it at a physical copy, which, again, I'm a newspaper man. It pains me. But Sean Reider of the Journal, you do a great job, man. Much appreciated. And maybe we'll check in with you at the end of the season, but I wanted to do a mid-season check-in. So thank you very much for your time, man.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on.
That was Sean Reider of the Albuquerque Journal. Appreciate his time. Quick commercial break, and we will be joined by Ben Wysong. We'll ask him about who he thinks Colorado State reminds him of, because he let us know off the air here. So my name is Ryan Tamori, Rick Thompson.
Richard.
This is the Pitt Press Live.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome back to the Pitt Press Live. Did see that Coach Pitino, Richard Pitino, son Tino tweeted out. I'm never going to get old of that joke. I'll never get tired of that joke. And I do like Coach Pitino. He's great to talk to. Hell, I make fun of myself. Appreciate Sean Reider, and he did tweet out. I'm all over the place. Let me collect one thought. Appreciate Sean Reider, and then Coach Pitino tweeted out that they were getting their Mountain West Conference rings tonight. I didn't hear anything about it. I mean, it's a personal, it's a team thing. Probably understandable. But we'll see if we can't talk about that. If we get to a former linebacker, Lobo, back, and very, very good friend of the show. We're always happy to have him on, Mr. Ben Wysong. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Not too bad, man. Yeah, it was good listening to Sean, just hearing his insight. he does a great job covering the Lobos. So it's always good to hear from him and see what he's got to say about this team. I mean, he's right there in the thick of it with them. So
I will go to this comment real quick. The Big Mountain Podcast. Rick went on this the other night. Hey, Pit Press, just getting here. We got to hear Rick's score prediction for UNM versus CSU, but I'm going to backtrack. Rick, they asked you the prediction for Utah State. What was it?
Yeah, so when I had the pleasure of going on the Big Mountain Podcast last week, they cover Mountain West and Big Ten Conference, mostly from a betting and matchup angle. But also, if you want to know more about Mountain West realignment news than you could ever know, follow these guys. I would love to have them on the show, JY and Steve. But last week on the show, I picked New Mexico to win. I think I said 51-48. So I was pretty close. They were fired up that I had a pretty good pick on this show. So yeah, it was fun. I'm saying this week, this is just my lean right now, guys. I can't spell here, but I cover for sure for the Lobos. I think they're 7-point dogs right now. And hell, I'm riding high. I think they win that game this weekend at this point in my mind. We'll get into the reasons here, but I just don't think Colorado State's offense is going to be able to keep up, even those UNM defense is like holy cheese, but we'll get into that here.
We asked Sean Reider, who, with the terrible question that I came up with on the spot, but he said it was a good question, who Colorado State reminds you of. He said New Mexico State, which kind of blew my mind. Ben, you thought Fresno State. Why?
I said Fresno only because of the type of personnel that they have. I mean, Fresno's got a good quarterback. CSU's got a good quarterback. Up until when Torrey got hurt, they had the good receivers. You had, because you got Mikey King with Fresno, and then you got Magdalena, which congrats to him and Luke getting on that Biletnikoff Award watch list. That was awesome. Yeah, for some reason, anytime I think of CSU, Fresno was the first one, but when Sean says New Mexico State, I could also see that too, especially with their running backs that NMSU has. Washington, that guy is such a hard runner. And I think that's something that Morrow, he definitely brings that element to that offense. So, yeah, just a little bit of combo of both, I guess. So, yeah, my first thought was Fresno just because of the quarterback play. So you got two solid quarterbacks right there on that team or on those teams.
I don't think we asked you on Monday because I don't think Luke had been announced that he was on the Fred Biletnikoff Award watch list, and then I think it's comeback player. I mean, if I did, then stop me. But that's got to be a huge honor for you and your family.
Oh yeah, I mean I know Luke doesn't really care about that stuff right now, but I mean I'm sure it's got to be awesome to hear about it, and just being honored and recognized, for everything that he's gone through and that he's going through now for this team. So yeah, I know he's pretty stoked. He probably didn't even know about it until we text him, honestly. He's just that guy. So, yeah. Everybody has words because even when I sent him the picture, he's all, thank you. I'm like, cool.
Man, a few words.
Yes.
I guess everybody's got one of those in their family and friends.
Oh, yeah. He is definitely that one.
And what I wanted to throw up here, and Ben's okay with it, if you have a football question, because I just watch it and used to drink and watch it and then gamble on it. If you have a question, ask Ben. That's what we're kind of opening this segment up to tonight. If you have a question, feel free to chime in, whether it be X's and O's. Rick, do you have anything to ask Ben?
I do. Ben, I know we got a Yaffle Super Bowl weekend coming up this weekend, and you got, two younger nephews playing in it. I want to get to that, but I want everyone to know that I'm a 2-time Yaffle champion myself with the Cibola Cougars. And you might say, "Oh, Ricky, that was just Yaffle." Well, the team I had was loaded, folks. Frankie Baca at running back, at kicker, at corner, Eric Cook at line. We stole Zach Arnett for a tournament. He played linebacker. Myself, who was a young stallion at guard. And we were just loaded, matched up against the La Cueva Bears. Henry T. himself would call the games on the radio, which I hope he still does.
Oh, dear God.
So just a legend. So Ben, just tell us a little bit about the Yaffle Super Bowl coming up this weekend, because I love Yaffle, and in my day we all had to wear the helmet, face mask with the bar in the middle.
Oh yeah, right in the middle. Yep, definitely had one of those too. Yeah, so this Sunday is the Alpha Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm excited for my younger brother Daniel. So he is actually the offensive coordinator for Volcano Vista sophomore division. So his oldest son Hudson plays for them, and then he's actually got a younger son too as well, Brody, who plays in the freshman division. And his team has actually been the one who's stacked. I think they've won 2 Super Bowls out of 3. I think they've only lost 1 game, like from a New Mexico team, and that was La Cueva last year in the Super Bowl. And both teams this year, they're both undefeated. They haven't lost. I think Hudson's team up until the playoffs only gave up 12 points. So yeah, it's an exciting weekend coming up. So like I joke with my brother, I was like, Daniel, you're going to be busy, dude. Like, luckily he's got Hudson's game before Brody's, because he also helps with Brody's team. So he can just focus on Hudson's game and then just jump right into Brody's. But yeah, no, those names that you mentioned, man, it's like, I mean, you guys are the New Mexico Junior League, dude, at that point. So, and those guys are all teammates of mine. So it's cool to see that those guys, I mean, you see it with Yaffle, because even like with Luke and Evan, with their Yaffle teams, they were all solid teams in Yaffle. And, you know, it starts that early. You know, on Luke's team, you had Trey Ortega, Trey Watson.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's definitely a thing. I mean, you kind of get a good idea. And then, you know, especially if you go into a high school system, like say like Cleveland, for example, just because I'm familiar with them, you know, where they basically run it like a mini college, like it's your chances of making it to the next level are really good. So, but yeah, the Yaffle, yeah, from, let's see, Hudson's got his game at noon, and then I think Brody's got his game at 2. So it's back to back.
And I just wanted to, I just think that like youth football like that, especially what they do in Artesia, is they have all the youth teams running the same offense. You know what your position is from the time you're, you know, in 6th, 7th grade. You know where you're going to be in high school. You know the playbook by the time you're a freshman. So I think in my time there, Yaffle was still in the high school districts. I don't know if, I'm guessing they still do it by high school district, but if some of those coaches could work with, you know, the Yaffle coaches and get them some plays, I think that would go a long way in building the culture of football in the community. But I think everyone should just still support it and have their kids play. For me, it was quite an experience, and the parents really get into it, decorating their cars, driving to the games, tailgating. You know, they call it the Super Bowl. So for kids, it's a really big deal. You get a trophy the size of your head, you know. So go out there and support it if you can. It's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, I look back with my Yaffle years, and I mean, they were some of the best years that I had. I mean, we didn't make it to a Super Bowl, but I still look back at that, and it's, you know, just from a development standpoint, you know, and it was cool for Daniel and I because Adam had just finished up at UNM, so we were like his little projects in a sense. Like, okay, like this is what we learned at UNM. You guys are going to start learning this now, and you know, it's kind of the same thing with Yaffle now. I mean, Daniel does it with his team with Hudson, and you know, it's really cool to see just, you know, just teaching these kids at a young age how to, you know, play football correctly, you know, instead of just, you know, you got a bunch of guys who like to live the glory day and just, you know, because they watch Dallas Cowboys on Sunday, they think they're some NFL genius and they try to put it on their kids. But it's really cool to see. And I think that's the nice thing with the Yaffle too that I've noticed is that the coaching is really solid, you know, throughout the board. So it's a lot of fun.
His name's Jerry Jones. His name's Jerry Jones.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna go, and I forgot to do this because I've been busy. Z Mountain Shadow, and I hope I'm saying that right, but at least I'm not really butchering anybody's name. Hey Ben, press guys, did you ever figure out the proper ruling on the muff punt fumble? I think the refs got it wrong, but no one seemed to even mention it at the time or afterwards. Ben, did you? I forgot to message you about that, man. I'm sorry.
Oh, for the punt?
Yeah, I don't know.
I tried to look a little bit. I couldn't really find anything. I'm still under the impression that you can't force anybody into your own returner. Like, I'm quite certain that was supposed to be a flag. I mean, I'll die on that not right now until proven otherwise. But from my understanding, it should have been a flag. And then I still, to this day, I was looking at that review. I looked at the replay, and I'm still certain that ball bounced off of that Utah State player's leg. I did not see it hit off of us. So, but yeah, to my knowledge, is that you can't force a player into the returner like that, because Luke didn't even, actually, looking back at it again, Luke didn't even come close to catching the ball. So, I mean, he was already on the ground.
I didn't get to look at it. I need to.
Yeah.
Sorry to forget on it, but it's still driving me crazy. Well, there you go. Here we go, Rick. Thanks for JY agrees and locked the Lobos tonight with his pick. There you go. Nick, Henry T is a New Mexico legend. On New Mexico radio stations like
we should see if we can get him to come on the show. I told my mom that.
Do.
And then I said I said, I don't know, Mom, if Henry T would even know how to use a computer. And she got mad at me for insulting old people. I am not ageist. I was just saying that he might not know how to join the stream. Maybe I'm not saying he doesn't know how to use a telephone. He's obviously a very sharp gentleman that also interviewed me as a player of the game in high school. So I respect him very, very much so. But yeah, we should really try. That would be amazing if I could interview him after 30 years.
Well, Ed knows him. So,
all right.
I mean, it's not a dead thing. I mean, Ed has really, is that you going like that, Rick?
Yeah.
I mean, Ed's got some good connections. Ed really helped me out with the New Mexico Legend series. So it should be something that we can do on the show.
Yes.
To at Lobo Ronnie, Ben, which game was your most memorable, and which teammates from your days at UNM do you still keep in contact with?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I mean, there's a few games to choose from. So for me, my sophomore year, I think my most memorable one would be the Texas Tech game where Zunker hit that field goal to win it. And it's funny you brought up Sonny Cumbie, because guess who the quarterback for Texas Tech was? So
that's right.
It's so funny, like how just like life comes at you full circle. So, and I got a funny story about that. So we had taken Luke and Evan to the TCU camp. I think it was after his sophomore year. And at that time, Sonny Cumbie was the offensive coordinator. And so, after the camp was over, so I go and introduce, like, hey, like, yeah, that's, I'm Luke's uncle. I was like, just so you know, I was like 27, 24, dude. He's like, what? I was like, do you ever have remember the game in Albuquerque? He's like, oh, son of a bitch. So that was like my moment with Sonny. So, I mean, super good guy. But, yeah, I would say the Texas Tech game was probably the most memorable. Gosh, beating Missouri with Brad Smith. That was another good one. I mean, Hank and Cole, those guys were just an amazing combination. So, gosh, what was another one? Speaking of CSU, beating CSU on the last second field goal up there in Fort Collins in 2006.
Was that wasn't Bradley Van Pelt? What? Not is it Bradley Van Pelt? I forgot his name.
I do not remember.
I don't think so. I think he was earlier.
He might have been done at that point. I think I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember, but yeah, all I remember is kicking that thing. I mean, yeah, like I said, Kenny Bird, man. I mean, he came through in the clutch and knocked it in. So, yeah, definitely those three games, I would say, right off the top of my head. But, I mean,
yeah,
that question, I can go on and on.
Van Pelt was gone. I'm sorry. He was at Colorado State he was drafted by the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in 2005, 2006. I think he was the backup for Jake Plummer. But he was at CSU, I think, from 2000 to 2003. Because I wish Mike was on, because my buddy Mike, we used to make a lot of fun from him. I'm going to gather this is an Eric question. Hey Ben, what would your advice of youngsters in Yaffle from a development perspective? What would be your advice?
Well, I think just for me personally, just because of my background, because I mean, I got my degree in exercise science. So, and once I got out of college, I got into I was working at Define Fitness as a speed and strength and conditioning coach. I would say, as far as development wise, teach your kids how to run. I know it sounds simple, but it's something that is a skill that, like, I was never taught how to run until I got out of UNM and I went to go to training for that job. If you can invest into getting a speed coach, that would be definitely very valuable for you. I mean, there's there are some great coaches here in the city too. I know Jared Saavedra, he's a great one. I know the guys over there at 8 Grady's, they do a great job as well. So, yeah, Caleb Haney. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Caleb Haney was a quarterback at CSU.
Right. That's right. I remember that name.
Yeah, but as far as development wise too, and the other thing from a football standpoint, I would say just keep it simple. Especially with the younger age, you don't need to be running shotgun in the rookie division. Like, even like this last game we were just watching with Hudson and the sophomores, it's like, yeah, you want to teach these guys to throw and stuff, but you got to be able to run the ball too, and just gradually work from there. And, Rick, I think you brought up a good point though, too. If you're able to make those connections with the high school coaches, as far as, maybe taking their top 5 simplest plays and just implementing into that system, that would be huge in terms of their development.
Again, this is our Ask Ben segment. Feel free to chime in. Rick, do you have anything final before you get off? Because I was going to ask about the college football games this weekend.
No, thank you guys for letting me join real quick. I'm going to give my NBA pick so it's on the record here as we kick off the season. I'm going to go Denver Nuggets come back and win this year with Westbrook added to the team, and I'm going to say they're going to beat Milwaukee Bucks. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Richard. That was Rick Thompson.
We'll see you later, buddy.
That's Rick Thompson, 2-time offensive state lineman for San Juan Mendoza. I'm going to start here. Ohio State has Nebraska. Ben, what are your thoughts? Nebraska has baby Mahomes and Dylan Raiola. I'm sure you've watched him. It's kind of, he's a pretty good quarterback. It's kind of creepy. But what are your thoughts, being that you've got ties to Ohio and Columbus, and your thoughts on that game?
Well, I know that Ohio State had the bye week after just playing Oregon, so that, they've had 2 weeks to prepare, and I'm sure they want to get back on the field. So I'm a little worried for Nebraska, honestly, especially considering I was not expecting that beat down from Indiana. I know Indiana is a good team, but gosh, I never thought even in my lifetime I'd ever see an Indiana 50, putting a 50 burger on Nebraska. That's just wild to me. And especially too in Nebraska, they're a good team, and like you said, with Raiola, I think he's going to develop, well, especially with that system over at Nebraska with Coach Rule. So, but yeah, I think Ohio State will put a pretty good whooping on them.
And I don't know if we fully delve into it on Monday, but Boise State and UNLV on Friday night. Give me a pick. I hate to do that, but your thoughts on that game?
Man, this one I go back and forth with, because I'm kind of like Sean, where, at first I was Boise. Now I'm thinking UNLV, because you're going to have a packed house there. I've heard that they've sold their, a pretty good amount of tickets there. But then I also then think too, Boise's been to the show. They've played them in those environments, where UNLV hasn't really done that. And I think that kind of goes a long way for a program, and Boise, they're kind of built for that kind of environment too. So, and I think it was Sean. It was either Sean or Rick who said, as far as UNLV's defense, it depends on which defense shows up. So if I had to pick right now, I'm still going to go with UNLV, but I won't be surprised. If I was a betting person, though, I'd bet Boise. What do you think? It's tough.
What is the line? I apologize. I got to go there. What I use is it's Boise by 3 now.
3? Okay. I was going to say 2.5, but okay.
It was there.
Yeah.
I check sportsline.com, and I need to get a guy by the name of Matt Severance on. I used to talk shit with him on Twitter. He's great. Nice. It opened at, and these are Caesars lines. It opened at 3.5, and it is now back to 3.5. Boise. The over/under opened at 59.5, and it is now at 64. So people are betting the over. I have maybe been a little bit more impressed with Boise than I should be. I think Ashton Genty should, unless he steps on a landmine, should be in New York in December.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would say flip the coin, man. I saw on Twitter somewhere, I just even Googled UNM football. This is a program defining moment for UNLV.
Sure.
You think about the years, and again, Ben, I always try with you on, with the lack of success that UNM has had. You've been there for that success. I think UNLV has probably been more in the toilet than them. Icky Woods went there. Kenny Mayne was a quarterback there. Obviously, Randall Cunningham went to UNLV.
Sure.
I think about Icky in the shuffle and just doing
Mhm.
this. But maybe more names. I think, UNM has had Terrence Mathis, Brian Urlacher. I think
Right.
of the Nick Spiegels of the world. I think of, my goodness, the linebacker for the Buccaneers. It's drawing a blank. I'm so sorry. Quincy Black, right.
Yep.
And I think of Glover Quinn. Hank Baskett had success. I probably like Hank for marrying a Playboy playmate more, but I was a Holly guy. I didn't watch that show, but man, out of the three of them,
I'm
Holly,
with you.
I love
Holly,
Holly.
I would have
Yeah.
picked Holly too.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm with you.
no, no disrespect.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's a statement game, UNM for it's a statement game for UNLV in their program. Here's another question. Ben, did you get in the game against Alex Smith in Utah? I think UNM was going to pull the upset that day.
I did not. So I was redshirted that year, but I do remember that game like distinctly. And yeah, I just remember that whole week too, even just the preparation of it. Everyone was just on edge and just ready to go for that game. And but hats off to Utah. That Utah team that year was just in a world of their own, especially with the Mountain West. I would have actually liked them see them play, someone better than I think they played Pitt that year.
They beat Pitt in the Fiesta Bowl, and they beat.
Yeah,
they beat
I was really curious to see how they would have done against I'm trying to remember who was good that year. Maybe like a Nebraska or Miami. They may not have been that good that year, but just one of those teams.
USC beat Oklahoma that year.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. USC and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then
just
next
one of
year.
Those guys. So, but yeah, that was. And another crazy thing too is with that is from the Ohio State standpoint too with me is I was there for Urban's first game as an Ohio State coach when they played Miami of Ohio, and that was routing itself. Like I said, life is a funny thing, man, because I remember shaking Urban's hand right after that game, and not thinking much of it, but it's you just see how everything happened since then. But yeah, no, I thought we were prepared and that we were more than capable of beating that team that year. So I believe we actually held them to their closest game, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the 0-4 one here in Albuquerque, right?
Yes.
I remember the Gabriel Fulbright play where it was technically an incomplete pass, but he returned it as a fumble, and it was the only points of the game. It was 28-7. You weren't on the team the year prior, right?
Yes.
Oh, you were. So you were at Utah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I've asked other guys about that. I've never asked you about that game. Mm-hmm. Can you, that's the game that I remember.
That game. That was something else, man. So, just that environment. Because you had the Olympics there. You had the Flame just sitting there on the south end zone. And just that whole environment was awesome. And then that was a loaded team. So, but. Like they say, any given Saturday, it can happen, and it was our Saturday. So,
I just wanted to ask you about. We're joined by Ben Weissong here on the Pit. You're as part of. I got to get you a pullover. We need to get you some gear. Looking at Pittsburgh is undefeated. They're 6-0. They play tomorrow night against Syracuse. We watch Syracuse and UNLV. Notre Dame and Navy's at 10 a.m. Indiana hosts Washington. Ole Miss hosts Oklahoma. 1:30 on CBS. Oregon and Illinois. Have you caught any of Illinois this year?
I caught a little bit of it, and they're a pretty solid team. I actually would not be surprised if they come out with a win. So they're very balanced overall. They're great in all three phases. I'm a little curious to see how well their offense can move the ball against Oregon's defense, but then I'm also kind of curious to see which defense shows up because looking back with the Ohio State game, I think it was one of those games where, that game was circled on the calendar when that schedule came out. So It's going to be interesting to see where, or I guess in a sense, how Oregon travels too, because now these guys got to make the 2,000-mile trip over to Illinois or however far it is. So, it's a different environment. You're playing in Champaign, Illinois compared to LA or, in the Bay Area. So it's going to be interesting.
It drives me nuts.
I know.
Much has been talk about what Brent Bielema's done there. Luke Altmaier, the quarterback there, over 1,500 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm not an X's and goes guys, but that's my one big stink is do not turn over the ball. He's played really well, and they've talked about him a lot. I think he's a sophomore. He's a junior, and I don't know how he found himself at a Stark Vegas. He's from Starkville, Mississippi. I don't know how he ended up at Illinois, but it's a funny thing. That game's 1:30 on CBS.
Speaking of Illinois, you also have former UNM lineman Bart Miller as their O-line coach.
There you go. Hey, I did not know that. Very good to know.
So I'm excited for him. I'm pulling for Illinois.
Gotcha. That's more the reason. 2:15, 1:30. I cannot believe I'm saying this. This BYU team is fun to watch. They're at UCF 1:30 on Saturday. I don't know. UCF is favored -2,
which is crazy to me.
I find that kind of crazy. That blows my mind. And not here to start a religion war. I make a politic joke every now and then. But Jake Retzlaff is a Jewish quarterback at BYU. And he's played phenomenal, over 1,600 yards. And he's thrown 16 touchdowns, and he uses his legs. What is it? Who's the JJ Jefferson? Is it JJ Jefferson that's the quarterback at UCF? This is going to bother me. He transferred from Arkansas.
I haven't really
KJ Jefferson, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, you were going to say something else. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I haven't really followed US or UCF that much this year. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to them much since the Scott Frost era, but I mean, that's just me.
No. They were supposed to be better this year. Who is it? It's Gus Malzahn, right?
Yeah,
Gus Malzahn. Texas is at Vanderbilt.
So apparently we have a quarterback controversy now at Texas, allegedly. So you got to kind of factor how much, or you got to look and see how much that's going to factor into this game. And then you got Diego, man. I mean, how can you go against Diego? I'm not to be biased, but I mean, when you got Diego in that coaching staff, I mean, you always have a shot. And then I just saw what Eli Stowers, who was originally a quarterback, and now he's like one of the top tight ends now in the nation for those guys. So, I mean, hats off to him and hats off to the staff of, hey, putting their best players on the field no matter where they play. So I don't know, man. Because is that game in Nashville?
It sure is.
See, my heart says Vanderbilt, but my head says Texas.
Well, then 24/7 Sports reported that Quinn Ewers was going to redshirt and transfer prepare for the NFL draft. He was going to prepare for the NFL draft. And it was a misreport. So, he did not look good against Georgia. I know Arch came in for a little bit, but again, I do not know. Again, Vanderbilt is 25th in the country. At 5:00, Florida State is in Miami. They are 21-point favorites. I used to really like Florida State. I'm all about those schools. I love it. I'm all about Cam Ward. I want the Giants to take him, so I'm going to do that. I think college football is better when the U is good, and I think the NFL is better when the Raiders are good.
Yes.
I have stole that from Jim Rome, but you look and reflect on it, and I think it's totally true. I think the NFL is good when the Steelers are good, the Cowboys are good, and the Raiders are good. And once again, look at that. Penn State is at Wisconsin, and then another top 25 matchup. LSU at Texas A&M at 5:30. SMU is at Duke. Duke is 5-1, and they had never beaten Florida State, and they had just done it this last year.
Right.
Kansas beat K-State. Any of those games pop out at you?
So for me, the Penn State one, I mean, that could be a potential trap game because I'm pretty sure that's in Madison, potentially.
It is in rowdy Madison, Wisconsin, which I heard is a great time.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually one of our bucket lists. I think if Ohio State plays at Wisconsin next year, I think that's going to be our next one. I
That's
think that could
amazing.
be a potential trap game for Penn State, potentially. What was the other one that you said? Oh, man,
LSU and
A&M
A&M.
and LSU. That's going to be a pretty good battle there. I'm pulling A&M just because I'm rooting for my hometown boy Trey Watson. You got he's their starting tight end. So, and that's a rowdy atmosphere down at Kyle Field.
You went last year, right?
Yes.
I think I asked you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are now 5-0. Excuse me. They are now 6-0 since they lost to Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
They're 6-1 and 4-0. I mean, they're kind of in the thick of it in the SEC conversation.
Sure.
I think I saw that Kansas has not beaten Kansas. I forgot what the stat was. Kansas State under Bill Snyder, it was like 15-0. Somebody was talking about it. And then the last college, basketball, I think KU's like 17 of 20 against K-State. So I don't know. It's a very, very good loaded college football Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. I have to ask you about the NFL. Is there anything resonating in the NFL that you are looking forward to? What have you liked, disliked? Just a softball question there.
I've actually been a little surprised with the play of Mahomes. He hasn't really been hitting on all cylinders like I guess he normally does. But I guess when you've been winning for so long, it's just you expect that same standard every week, I guess. But now, overall, I've actually been really enjoying watching the Lions this year. I'm a huge fan of their coach. He seems like the type of guy that you could have all those guys full grown men just be able to go run a wall through him, for him. So I've actually really enjoyed watching those guys. Yeah, that's the big team that stood out to me the most. What about you?
The Giants are, it's a shit show to watch. They've played better than I thought, and they've looked like crap. I thought they might have played the Eagles better on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about the Falcons and the Seahawks because when I bet on them, I can't figure it out. And I got screwed on Sunday. I think the Ravens are good. I feel like Derrick Henry gives them a better option at running back, although I still don't think they can figure out how to close games. They were up big on Monday night and they still found themselves only winning by 10. I know that's two scores.
Man, speaking of that game, Chris Godwin.
I know.
Well, I have him on my fantasy team, and
and he was having a phenomenal year. When they won the Super Bowl, he was so clutch for Brady. I think that it's still a two-score game. If you're on the field, everybody's flying around. The Ravens were flying around.
Yeah,
they knew it. I rewatched it, and his leg was just like I can't do it. I don't know why I'm doing like that, but it was just like the completely different direction.
Yeah.
I really do like the Ravens, man. I think I'm going to probably rub a lot of things a lot of listeners the wrong way here. I think there's a real possibility that the Chiefs can run the table. I just think the way they're playing defense. I listened to Coach Jason Brown from Last Chance U. He said he always talks about how he gets things right. He said Colorado wouldn't win over 4.5 games. They've won 5. He said Derrick Henry wouldn't work out in Baltimore. So far, so good. I think he's comical. But he had said that, and I was just like, I'm not an X's and Go's guy. I didn't coach in the NFL. And he really, really dislikes the Chiefs. And he calls their offensive gimmicky, and I don't necessarily understand what's wrong with that. I think they play really, really good defense.
Gimmicky has won them multiple Super Bowls. Let's be real. Who gives a shit?
No, you're exactly right.
You know what I mean? From that standpoint, yeah.
Yeah, until you're winning multiple Super Bowls. You've won multiple Super Bowls at the highest level.
Yeah.
I'm a Steve Spagnuolo guy because of what he did with the Giants in 2007. He's probably a Hall of Famer as a defensive coordinator, so I'm all about it.
Yeah, he's a great coach. I think I just saw, too, didn't they just pick up DeAndre Hopkins?
They did. He got traded there today.
Yeah, so, he has an element.
Yeah, he's a safety net for for Mahomes. One last question here, Ronnie Lobo. Ronnie, OJ Swift ran T-Day from 2006. What do you remember about him as a player? I don't remember that name.
OJ Swift, man, he was the silent assassin. So like the quietest guy on the field, but I mean that guy would bring a hat. So he was, he was a safety for us. And yeah, OJ, super good guy. I really enjoyed, being on the field with him. He was, just a hard worker. Like I said, he was kind of reminds me of Luke. Just, pretty quiet. Just kept his head down and just, he would grind. So man, I haven't heard OJ's name in a hot minute. So, but great guy.
Doesn't ring a bell.
I was a big fan of him.
That name doesn't ring a bell.
He was the same. He would have been, I think, the same year with like Glover. I think he was a year after me. He was with like Glover, Blake Lagone, all those guys. Yeah, DeAndre Wright.
Gotcha. You know what? I didn't, and I don't know if we have asked you this, and this will be the last question for you tonight. And I appreciate you hanging on late.
I've been digging this. These questions.
I know
you.
Awesome. I'm glad you're joining
this
us.
This is awesome. I love it.
So as much as we can have you on, and we'll probably bug you Saturday morning. It's, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name. It's Marcus Smith in 07. Marcus Smith and
was it Travis Brown?
Travis Brown.
Yep.
Probably, I think they were 2,000 yards, as good as you can get. Donovan Portery was awesome. I think it was thrown out there. And I think with this staff, with Nick Trujillo, obviously your nephew, Luke Weissong, Caleb Medford, do you think that this is, no disrespect, with as good as they were, have you seen flashes of them with your nephew and the other wide receivers on this team?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially I would say Luke was very similar to Marcus in the sense that, for one, they're both speed guys. I know Marcus was a track guy coming out of California. I think he was actually, don't quote me 100% on this though, but I want to say he came close to like winning state in the 100-meter. And this is California and San Diego.
Wow, yeah.
But I know he was a big speedster guy. Travis was, if you needed, a first down, Travis was the guy that you were going to go to. He was Mr. Reliable for us. Because even then, like I think back too, it's like that 05 group that we had. You had Travis, you had Marcus, you had Hank. Our receiving staff was stacked. And, compared to the receiving group now, I think they're all very similar. Like, Luke, he's your possession guy, whereas you got, Nick and you got Caleb where, hey, if you need a back shoulder fade, you're either going to go to Nick or you're going to go to Caleb. You got two, taller basketball, type guys, and then you got your, then like I said, you got Luke that just, he's your Swiss Army knife. The kid pretty much does everything, other than throw the ball, which we don't want to see that. But
and why not?
But hey, you might with Evan though. I would put Evan a little bit. That kid. You watch his highlight tips from Cleveland, and man, that kid was just, amazing. But I could definitely see the comparisons. And like even when I was reading, the clip that I think Frank had put out about Luke Spiletnikoff, where it had the receptions. So I think Marcos was number one, but then you also had like Travis in the same year. He also had like 75 receptions as well. So it's like, holy cow, like you had, first off, hats off to Donovan for spreading the wealth, between those two. So, yeah, I think it just makes you realize just how good that 07 team was.
I had to go to sportsreference.com because I have to see if I can find the statistics. So, God, Roland Bruno, that's a name that has stuck out. Marcus Smith, 91 receptions, 1,025 yards, 12.4 yards a catch.
Yep.
Travis Brown, 76 receptions, 1,031 yards, 13.6 yards a reception. And then you had...
And that's in the same year.
That's the same year. And then you had Rodney with 292 attempts, 1,177 yards, and 4 yards an attempt. That's a Rocky Long offense. And I loved...
Oh, for sure.
To do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I want to say Coach Dodd might have still been the OC. I can't remember. We kind of went through a couple of coaches, and I remember, Bob Toledo was our offensive coordinator for 1 year. I think it was actually my senior year. But yeah, I mean, you think back then, I mean, especially that 07 team, those guys were ready to go. I mean, you had a lot of guys coming back,
Dave Baldwin
from our 06 team. I look back too, and I kind of think of like what could have been with our senior year had Cole not gotten hurt in that New Mexico State game. I mean, but then again, it also gave more development for Donovan, to go into that 07 year. So,
what's really funny is where I live, there's a neighborhood Walmart. Like I can walk there in 5 minutes, 7 minutes. And I was walking around there sometime over the summer, and he was in a boot because I think he was playing Arena League, and he was in his little cart, the motorized one. I don't know why I'm on my hog. And he was, and I looked at it. I didn't say anything. I should have, because I looked at him and I walked by him and I was like, it's Donovan Portery. Like, holy shit. Like, and I lost him. I didn't, because I was going to go bug him and be like, hey, this is what I do. We'd love to have you on. But yeah, he was just in the motorized cart shopping at the neighborhood Walmart. Yeah, it was totally random, but man, those were some good teams.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. And the cool thing about those teams, there was a lot of good people on those teams too. I mean, like you said, Ronnie, I mean, great questions tonight from him. I mean, like keeping in contact with these guys. It's like, yeah, I was just texting Billy Britton not even a couple hours ago, former La Cueva guy, and he was our nose tackle. So, that's the cool thing with our, I think this is going to see something that you'll see with Coach Mendenhall's teams and that you've seen with Coach Long's teams now is that we all stay in connection. Like we all stay in touch. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years, 15 years that gone by. It feels like we were just together like a week ago and we just had a week off from practice. You know what I mean? So it's been great.
No, that's really good to hear. I mean, it's crazy to me how many New Mexico guys, I mean, that was the thing, how many New Mexico guys played on those teams. That knew guys I graduated high school with, that knew guys that graduated. Curtis Pino's an oral surgeon, dentist here. He graduated from St. Pius when I was a freshman. One of the greatest names of all time, Conrad Bokic.
I love Conrad, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, there you go. See, these are Pius guys.
Gosh. Man, you want to talk about like the funniest guy in our locker room? Holy cow, man. And it was great because, and it's funny because we just saw him for the LSU game. I hadn't seen him since our last game because I don't think he played our senior year. But again, like when I ran into him at the LSU game, it's like, dude, I feel like I literally just saw you like 2 weeks ago and we're just, shooting it off as if like we just seen each other. I mean, he's wild though. There's something to be said about us Pius guys. I think you guys are wild, man.
I don't. My liver hates me. Conrad was a funny guy. I've run into Curtis Pino. I know. Is it David Ortiz? Paul Ortiz. Why did I say David Ortiz? Paul. Okay. I was watching a Netflix documentary on the Red Sox. David Ortiz. Paul Ortiz. He sits with Curtis Pino at the game. He's a Pius guy. He's a good dude. But yeah, man. I've heard stories about Bokic, and he's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's funny, man.
My friend Sean Mallory, who I graduated high school with, when we played La Cueva our senior year in 2004. I think they went on to win state, and my buddies hung with Rick. They hung with La Cueva for like a quarter. And I think that was like one of the only few games they lost because they were pretty good last year. They got to the state semifinals, but Frankie got like decked out of, and I'm not talking shit about Frankie. It's just a funny story. He got decked out of bounds. And my buddy Sean, he's a tall guy, I guess. And I've told this story on here and I don't know if it's true. It's hearsay from the guys on the football team that he just overlooked like Frankie and was just like, oh, Frankie Baca, and did something like that. And I guess he got up, but that's par for the course for Sean.
I could just see Frankie's face too, like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, and they're probably friends now. I mean, it's good shit. I love.
It's funny is that because I've been meaning to ask Ricky, because Daniel, he was on that he was 04 from Manzano, and I guess like that summer before there was a 7-on-7 at Wilson, and I guess like a full-on brawl broke out. I was not there for this.
Between St. Pius and
St. Pius and Manzano, they were doing a 7-on-7, I guess, and I think it was that summer of 03. And I've been meaning to ask Ricky this.
He would know.
But yeah, because I just remember hearing the stories about that from Daniel. Like, like Nathan Brown went and like kneed someone in the face and like just all kinds of crap. So I've been meaning to ask Ricky about that. It's like you look back, like it's 20 years ago, and you're like, oh my
god. No, that would have to be a Rick question on record.
Okay. I've been meaning to ask him.
Yeah, no, it's I just remember the Sean Mallory one vividly.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
Yeah. What was I going to say? What's very funny is we loved our head coach and was my PE coach, San Juan Mendoza. San Juan's the man. Yeah, he's the man. Yep. And it's funny you bring that up because he ended up becoming the dean of students at Monzano. But I've told this story on here probably when they beat Artesia at Community Stadium in 2016. The Pius guys, I had like 7 or 8 guys over, and we started pregame, and then we went to the game, which was 5 minutes from my house, and we were probably more excited than the players on the field. It was like, dude, you just beat Artesia. Like, come on. I don't.
Yeah, like, do you understand the level of seriousness you just? Yeah,
that was it. Here's another one. Michael Tui, underrated player. I remember that name.
Yep, Michael. He was he was another wild one too. But man, that guy, like Michael was a lot of fun to be around. I'll never forget the play. We were playing Missouri. It was actually the game that we played here, and where he had that interception as a D lineman. Because I remember the call. It was anytime see Coach Long do this, it's auto. And that's where our DNs go out in coverage. I'm like, there's no freaking way Tui's going to cover anybody. Well, sure as shit, man. He comes up with a pick on Chase Daniel. So it's like, and if I remember correctly, too, I think he returned it for a touchdown. But, Tui. Yeah, that guy was
here. And it was the game here.
Yeah, it was the game here.
I'd have to look up that.
I'd have to look, too. I'm like 80% sure he returned it for a touchdown because it was down on the north end zone. And but yeah, Michael, he was rowdy. He was intense. I would have hated to go against him in one-on-ones every day as a lineman. He did.
He did return. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. What I was gonna say. Damn it. I was trying to think of something to say and I forgot. I don't know. I'll think of it again. But I'm gonna wrap up the show. Ben, thank you for joining us as always. I'll text you after the show. But
for sure.
Now I was not planning on going off the rails, but maybe we'll try to do just Ask Ben segment every Wednesday night. But
I'm down. Count me in, man.
All right, we appreciate it. Ben, thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, go Lobos.
Appreciate it. All right, I will wrap up the show here. In a second, where did my special? There we go. There it is. Perfect. So that way you can see our advertisement. Hey, my name is Ryan Tamori. I'm going to wrap up the show. I'm sure Jimmy H will be thrilled about that. Appreciate Ben Wysong, Nick Coppola, Sean Reider of the Journal, and Rick for joining Rick Thompson tonight.
Richard.
Be right back. Again, this is the Pit Press Live.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
I move the camera down. I don't know how the room looks. Hold on. That's very, very bright. Had to sit down because I stand for some of it. Appreciate make that. You know, I don't really care what I look like right now. Appreciate Ben Wysong. That was a great segment. It's Albuquerque's a small world. Sean Reider, Nick Coppola, again, Lobo football team plays Saturday at 3:00, and the game's on the Mountain West Network there in Fort Collins, Fort Collins against Colorado State. Jay Norvell. They didn't beat Colorado this year. Again, men's basketball team. There's a basketball game next Monday night. UTEP exhibition at Ronnie Chavez again. It's the Jimmy and Ronnie show tonight. The only bad thing about the rings the player got was the horrible shield right in the middle of the ring. It's flashy though. Again, my understanding of the shield, and I love Steve Alford, that was his creation. And I don't know how that would sit with many Lobo fans. And again, allegedly, but I don't like the shield. I wish they would do that UNM, that new font they have. I think that would be great. I would put that on the helmet. Maybe the Lobos, that new font. I like that. I'm a sucker for the, even though I'm alumni, I do at least have some of a shirt with the UNM. Actually, it was a pullover I found on eBay. I was perusing eBay one day, and it's a Nike mesh pullover and t-shirt, and it's got that new font. Again, that's apparently allegedly the UNM Steve Alford creation is that shield. I'm not a fan of it. I love Steve. He was great to us last week. I've always loved talking to him. I just really don't like that shield. I wish it was something different. I haven't seen the rings. UNM needs to be block unis. Yeah, I mean, many of you have seen there's turquoise in the uniforms this year. I like the uniforms. I really like those. I think they do look good anytime they incorporate. I'm tired. Incorporate the turquoise in it. It's fantastic. What else was I going to say? Not teal, as I accidentally tweeted out during the Montana State game. I was have a million things on my mind. I wanted to end tonight's show because I wanted to start with James Franklin because that really struck a chord with me. And right before we went on air, I had watched the new Netflix documentary, which I think premiered tonight today on Netflix at midnight last night, was the comeback about the 2004 Boston Red Sox as they were down 3-0 in the NLCS and in Game 3 had gotten their behinds kicked. I grew up watching baseball with my dad, and that's where I fell in love with baseball. The other sports is pretty much my mom. I fell in love with college football when I was young. I love the NFL. I love the history of it. I pursued journalism. I don't know if it necessarily thought what it would be, but I enjoyed writing for some time. I wish I wrote more on our site. I don't have time for that. I try to at least have something prepped for the show, and I work a full-time job in sales, and I also have a 7-year-old. But this time of year means a lot to me. I lost my dad in April of 2004. And it's very eerie because my dad died on April 2nd, 2004, and my son was born on April 4th, 2017. So go figure. And he's a smart little thing like my dad, unlike me. My dad, as I mentioned on the show, was working on his PhD in electrical engineering. He ended up on disability. He wrote his own patent. People don't do that. You hire a patent clerk to do that. He taught himself how to paint, how to cook. When he was on disability, he worked at Sandia National Labs, and things got really bad towards the end of 2003, that summer, heading into my junior year, and he fell asleep at press on April 2nd. Won't tell you the procedure that was going on, and he did not wake up from that. His blood pressure didn't drop, it spiked, and that was that. And I was not at the hospital when it happened, but the reason I'm delving into that, I love postseason baseball. Doesn't matter who's playing in it, I watch. And the year prior, the Cubs and the Yankees almost met in the World Series if it weren't for the Marlins. And I was watching the comeback on Netflix before we went live, and I really enjoyed the documentary. And again, you're talking to a Mets fan, so anytime the Yankees lose, I'm all for it. Except I had a future on them to win the American League, and I had a future on them to win the World Series. I've hedged that bet because I think the Dodgers, it's a death series with Fernando Valenzuela dying. Obviously, I wasn't alive for Fernando Mania. I know what it means to LA. He really kind of put them on the map, especially after losing to the Yankees in the late 70s. That 81 World Series with Steve Garvey, that really good infield, probably maybe the best infield of all time with the Dodgers. But I enjoyed the documentary, and this whole rant is my recommendation for that. And I was on the edge of my seat as a senior in high school watching the Red Sox come back, Johnny Damon hitting a grand slam and then a 3-run home run later in the game. They completely demolished the Yankees. Again, that series resonates with me. And I was thinking of my dad as I had just lost him. And they beat the Cardinals, who was my step grandfather's favorite team. So, I recommend the documentary. Again, it just premiered on Netflix. The Comeback. Pedro Martinez is great on it. They used to take shots at Jack Daniels. They said Kevin Millar, who, if you watch Unintentional Talk, it was kind of I don't know. They were taking shots at Jack Daniels before those games, and that's what loosened them up. John Romero hitting me up. Brian, honest to God, truth. Think I worked with your dad at Sandia. Stephen Tamori, Stephen with a PH. That was my dad. They moved here in '85. Then I grew up didn't grow up in New Jersey. I was always back and forth. That's that. I don't even think I got that out because I was talking about my dad. Yeah, Schilling's Bloody Sock is in the hall, I believe. Yeah. I treat the world. I'm not a Diamondbacks fan, but I treat that 2001 World Series like the Holy Grail, what it meant to the country after 9/11. And if you look back at that series, is very topsy-turvy. Sorry, John, I lost my train of thought reading those comments. If you know Ed, reach out to him. That 2001 series, very topsy-turvy. I mean, the Diamondbacks in games 1 and 2 had kind of beat the living shit out of the Yankees, and then the Yankees had the ghost come out in the Bronx. And then they had to rally in game 6 and game 7. And Randy Johnson pitching back-to-back nights. That game 7 is, unbelievable in my mind, and it still resonates because I watched it with my dad, and I don't think he really cared that the Yankee watched because it was such a believable, an unbelievable series after 9/11. I'm rambling, and I got caught off guard by John there and talking about my dad. I am going to go to Ronnie Chavez before I signed off, and I agree with you on the helmets. I wish they did that time. Reports say UNLV is expecting record crowd on Friday, 35 to 37,000. I believe Allegiant Stadium holds close to 70. I think it's 67 or 66,000. I'd have to look at the numbers for the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people in Boise are making the trek. We had BJ Rains on the show. And I know a lot of people with Bronco Nation News are traveling for that game. I'm amped for that game. I can't wait. I like watching both of these teams. I love Genty. His rushing total bets over are insane. I think the last game against Hawaii was 186.5, and he had nearly all of that by halftime. He hit it over easily. I think he had 217 yards on the day. I can't wait for that game. I have a huge setup in here. I have monitors here. You can see this is a 55-inch TV behind me, LED. I am looking forward to this World Series too. I think I've mentioned, and it's a very quick and probably not the best take. I think this is something that the MLB needs. I don't know if necessarily a Subway Series would have been good for them. Would anybody have cared outside of the country, in the rest of the country outside of New York? Same old thing, same old song and dance. I, for one, for those of you who know, I'm a Mets fan. I would have loved it. I think this Dodgers series is very, 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 this Dodgers Yankees series is very important to them with the star power, with the name between the Juan Sotos of the world and the Aaron Judges of the world, Shohei Ohtani's. I'm a Mookie Betts guy, always have been, always will be. I like Freddie Freeman. He's a phenomenal first baseman. The Dodgers bullpen has shown up this month. I don't know. The Yankees bullpen has been shaky. People said they didn't, some pundits thought nationally that they did not play that well against, that the Yankees hadn't played that well in October. I think they've gotten clutch hits out of their big three, and you could throw Anthony Volpe in there. He's second, third year. He's played very well from them, but between Juan Soto and Aaron Judge and Juan Carlos Stanton, who I've always loved, that, they needed him this month, and he did very hitting home runs. I'm sorry, again, I'm thrown up by John. Yeah, he did like the stock market, and he was very smart with it. My dad discovered Krispy Kreme, I think, before it kind of blew up, and sold it in the year like 20 years ago. He would always watch CNBC in the morning. Yeah, that was him. Glasses, mustache, Hungarian. We're of Hungarian descent, and my dad was darker complex than an actual African American woman at Sandio, which, again, I have the blazing saddle sense of humor. How crazy it reports saying Soto will play with the Dodgers next season. I apparently don't want him. Don't like the antics with the shuffle he does. He's a phenomenal player. Look at the clutch hits he's had. I think he's going to stay in the Bronx. I don't think the Yankees want to lose him. I'll be honest. I was all for Aaron Judge going to the Mets. I thought it would have been great. I think Aaron Judge just is not a full-blown home run power hitter. He's at times, I think it was either this year or last year, he lost patience at the plate. He's actually over his career been a very patient batter. And I just don't think he necessarily hits home runs. He's been an extra base hitter. I like him. I don't knock on Aaron Judge, and I've heard really good things that he's a nice guy. I can't see the Yankees letting Juan Soto go to LA, especially with the series that is coming up. I am tired of talking. I am trying to catch the end of this Suns Clippers game, which is an anomaly because I think the NBA is hot trash during the regular season. We will be back this Saturday morning with a Morning Howl episode. Give our picks. Obviously, we're going to have to recap Boise State, UNLV. Neff and I will be back with our picks. I don't know how people feel out there, if they're kind of excited with the football team with basketball season coming around. I think if this team wins 4 in a row, I think there will be some excitement. I don't know what will happen the following week with Wyoming, but again, we have a lot to talk about right now with basketball season around the corner, literally. Friday, it's 72 hours away from Monday. I'm excited to see UTEP. Going to do a little bit of research on them, find out about the team in El Paso. And I think, what is it? Joe Golding. I forget his name. UTEP men's basketball. Joe Golding. I did have it right. Abilene Christian. Yeah, he got that win in the 2001 tournament over Texas. Sonny Cumby. I completely forgot he was at Texas Tech. Anyway, hey, great show tonight. Viewership was great. Appreciate the questions. Jimmy H, you're forgiven. I had to fill the show for nearly half an hour by myself. So I had to find something to talk about. I need the UNM people to step up when we do talk UNM. But appreciate everybody listening. Special thanks to Nick Coppola, Sean Reider. I didn't mean to get off track about the World Series there. I was talking to John Romero. Apparently he knows, one of our listeners knows my dad. To my business partner, Eric Malton, Ed Nunez, Nick Nunez, still congratulations on getting married. Rick Thompson. Richard. Have to do it for you guys. Jacob Neff, and I guess most people seem to like me. My name's Ryan Tamori. This was the Pit Press Live. Pit Press Live. We will talk. I almost pulled a Diego Pavia there. Talk to you on Saturday morning on our Morning Howl show, UNM football pregame show. Everybody have a safe Friday night, Thursday. Talk to you Saturday morning.